our protagonist? Frey Zeon Starlight was a hero who sided with the Demon King and chose to destroy the world. After completing his mission, he surrendered his legendary hero's sword. The Demon King called him a despicable coward for acting like a hero, yet slaughtering his family and his lover at her own request. Frey did all this just to become her subordinate. Seeing how useful Frey was, she acknowledged his efforts and granted his wish. Deep down, he knew this was the only path he could take. One by one, he had massacred those who were supposed to be his comrades, as well as the princess of the kingdom, who had stood against the demonic forces. All his former allies cursed him in their dying breaths, regretting that they had ever trusted him. But his lover, Serena, accepted her fate, telling him, "I will still love you no matter what happens." The Demon King then praised his actions and ordered him to destroy the sword. To her surprise, he drew the blade instead, revealing that he intended to die alongside her. This was the only path he could take to save the world and his fallen loved ones. Following their clash, Frey woke up, finding himself much younger. He realized he had traveled back in time to the day before his enrollment at the academy. Checking the system, he saw he had been awarded the title of the Villain's Path. By completing his mission of dying with the Demon King after killing his friends, Frey had unlocked a hidden route. And this time he swore to save everyone. About 10 years ago, before Frey entered the academy, he asked his father about the squiggly, rune-like letters on a piece of paper he was holding. The old man told him they were called kana. He explained that only those who inherited the bloodline of the heroic Starlight family could read them. It was then Frey realized his father was referring to the letters written all over their ancient books. In response, the man silently led Frey to an entrance and told the boy to go in alone. Curious, Frey asked him why. The old man told him he needed to be strong, citing a prophecy about a hero from their bloodline. The hero who vanished with the Demon King after defeating the evil ruler. The Demon King would emerge once again after 1,000 years. Moreover, a new hero destined to save the world would also be born. But that was only the part of the prophecy known to the public. The rest of it stated that both the Demon King and the successor to the new hero would appear in the present era. Realizing the gravity of this, Frey was led into a dark room, and his father slammed the door shut behind him. The boy immediately screamed and banged on the door, as any normal child would. But then he noticed a soft glow. He followed the trail of light and arrived at the legendary hero's sword. He reached out to touch it, but a holographic figure appeared warning him not to. Startled, Frey asked for the figure's identity, and the man revealed he was Frey's ancestor. At first, Frey doubted him, as the statue of the great hero was incredibly handsome, which annoyed the legendary hero. The man then asked Frey, "Did you come here to learn how to conquer the world?" Frey replied, "No, I came because my father said this is how I can protect my loved ones." Because his reasoning sounded so similar to his own, the hero told Frey that the current world could face a difficult end, not just a tragic one. These terms only confused the poor boy. So the hero placed his palm on Frey's face, and instantly, the boy witnessed demons destroying the world. The hero told him that this would be the world's fate if he took the wrong path. After experiencing the loss of all his loved ones in the trance, Frey collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. The hero noted that this reaction was expected for his first time. With tears in his eyes and newfound determination, Frey made a vow, swearing an oath like his ancestor that he would protect everyone he loved. The hero from the past almost forgot that Frey was his successor, so he promised to teach Frey the path he needed to take to protect those he cherished. He repeated the process, showing the boy his own destiny, warning him that it would not be an easy path, as Frey would have to destroy the world himself and die alongside the Demon King. Only then would he unlock the hidden route and face the new trials awaiting him. He hoped the boy wouldn't lose heart. Back in the present timeline, 10 years later, Frey noted that everything had gone smoothly, but the only difference was the presence of a system. While waiting for the system to update, Frey realized it was a new capability that would prove useful in the future he was about to face. He compared it to what he had seen in the prophecy book as a child and realized he could overcome any problem in his first trial based on what his ancestor had shown him. If he could master the system, he might finally be able to protect everyone. Just then, Kanya knocked on the door and Frey cheerfully told her to come in, hoping for a moment of relaxation with her. After all, it had been a while since he last saw her smile. As soon as the system finished updating, it warned Frey that someone was approaching. And the moment Kanya walked in, The system informed Frey that the 5 main heroines still retained their memories from the previous loop. It was then he realized he was in deep trouble. The system's rules dictated that Frey, playing the role of a fake villain, had to continue committing despicable acts to earn points. And if his good deeds were discovered, his life force would be severely depleted. He currently had about 100 points, which he could use to purchase necessary items or skills. After warning Frey about the heroine's awareness, the system initiated an emergency activation. Frey was shocked by the outcome, and from the death glare he received from Kanya, he could sense her intense, murderous intent. She was his childhood friend, cursed from birth with dark magic that drained her life force, and she was one of the 5 main heroines mentioned in the prophecy. Now that she retained her memories, Frey feared Kanya might kill him at any moment because of how cruelly he had treated her in the past. Kanya then asked if he was hungry, so he ordered her to bring his usual meal. She glared at him before leaving to carry out his order, and he panicked, knowing she was out for his life. So he decided to prepare for her revenge. Suddenly the system popped up, informing him that it had detected a strong murderous intent nearby. This was due to an innate skill that helped detect a life-threatening danger once a day. Frey tried to logically deduce why Kanya would want to kill him, noting that she wouldn't be able to escape unscathed if she tried. The door opened, and he sensed death radiating from the bowl of soup she brought. Realizing she must have cursed the food with dark magic to send him to an early grave, Frey knew he was cornered, so he decided to play his villainous role to the hilt. He did this by yelling at her for bringing soup, demanding a sandwich before hurling the plate at the wall near her. By acting cruel, he earned a fake villain point, and, filled with hatred, Kanya stormed off to make him a sandwich. A few minutes later, she returned with a strange-looking sandwich. To her surprise, he told her there was no cheese, so she had to remake it. Kanya tried to protest, but Frey boldly questioned her for talking back to him. Consequently, she backed down and later reappeared with another sandwich, but he complained the bread was too dry. Frey made her remake it over and over again, and by the 8th attempt, she stumbled as she held the poisoned sandwich. He saw how persistent she was, realizing that Kanya had kept remaking and infusing her magic into the sandwiches until she was completely exhausted. He picked up the sandwich and pretended he was about to eat it, which made Kanya eager in anticipation, but then he tossed the sandwich aside, claiming he would rather have had the soup from earlier. When he ordered her to make it again, Kanya collapsed. He caught her, thinking how cruel fate was that he couldn't even share a brief moment of laughter with her. He laid her on his bed, realizing that earning fake villain points was even more life-threatening than he thought. Seeing how low Kanya's mana was, Frey replenished her cursed body with his own life force. He noted it was the only way to stabilize her dark magic, as he wouldn't live long anyway. He concluded that filling her with his life force was the only way forward. After doing so, Frey thought about how to escape his ridiculous situation, as there was no way he could proceed with his original plan. He noted that for the next 2 months, before the main quest began, he had planned to lay low and quietly prepare without revealing his identity, but given the current situation, that was likely off the table. He didn't know how to tactfully deal with the remaining 4 heroines he hadn't met yet. Frey prioritized the order of his encounters, noting that Serena, his fiancée, didn't require immediate attention. On the other hand, Princess Glanna was an outcast royal with no power to oppose him, so she wouldn't cause him any trouble, unlike Firaz and Irina, whom he would cross paths with frequently at the academy. In Firaz's case, she was a naive pawn of the church, capable of ruining him socially with their backing. But Irina was the bigger threat, being reckless and impulsive. This meant she might kill him on the spot without hesitation. Kanya was also in a helpless position because her younger sister was held hostage. But Frey had to gather fake villain points regardless of the risks, so he would have to provoke her even more. He noticed that the points he could gather from Kanya were very limited, so it would be better for him to earn riskier points by interacting with the other heroines. Now, armed with the information he had gathered from the prophecy book and his previous life, Frey planned to sort everything out the next day and prepare for the real battle, which would begin after his enrollment. Frey ended up studying the prophecy book until dawn the next day. He looked back at Kanya, who was sleeping soundly, then lifted her from the bed and placed her on the floor. After letting out a sigh of relief, he yelled at her, scolding her for sleeping too long. Startled, Kanya looked around and realized she had fallen asleep in his room. She gave him a judgmental look to see if he had done anything to her, but he simply ordered her to hurry up and prepare the carriage, as it was his first day at the academy. Kania stood up and left as instructed, and only then did Frey look at his status window, confirming he had 100 points. He sighed, noting that it was far too little. He would need hundreds of points to buy skills, so he would have to keep earning them, but only moderately to avoid dying. As he watched Kanya prepare the carriage, Frey hid a smile beneath his displeased facade, thinking that his time at the academy was going to be very interesting. That evening, after Frey gave a speech at the opening ceremony, the nobles swarmed around him, singing his praises in hopes of winning his favor. He played along with their flattery, while noting that they were nothing but vultures with glaringly obvious ulterior motives. One of the students informed him that they wanted to propose placing their products in the imperial palace, which was why they had brought some commoner women for his entertainment. He said he would consider their request once he saw their sincerity. In reality, he was disgusted by their behavior and wanted to deal with them, just as he wanted to take down the Demon King. But for now, he had to earn points. He earned points faster by acting despicably towards the nobles. Suddenly, he saw the boys dragging the girls into the room and realized they had brought Irina in. Frey couldn't believe his eyes that Irina had been caught, as she was a genius in elemental magic, with fire being her specialty. It seemed no one could handle her, so he wondered if she had gotten caught on purpose to eliminate everyone in the room at once. Frey immediately opened his system shop and reviewed the skills he could buy. With the points he had on hand, he selected the emergency defense skill. This skill would protect the target from one fatal blow. Even though it cost 70 points, Frey didn't hesitate to purchase it, knowing his life was on the line. Once he acquired it, he noticed that Irina's mana was completely drained. This struck him as unusual. Thus, he concluded that she intended to store her mana and unleash it all at once. While she was struggling with the nobles, Frey told them to get lost, leaving them stunned by his attitude. This time, he repeated himself in a much angrier tone, declaring that he wanted to have some fun with the ladies. Terrified, the nobles scuttled away, leaving the girls to Frey's mercy. He then walked up to Irina and suggested they go somewhere quieter to have some fun. She looked him dead in the eye and called him disgusting, wishing she had used her ultimate magic to attack him instead of the Demon King's army. He smirked at her like a sadist and told her to shut up, then reached out his hand to intimidate her. This made Irina curse inwardly, as she had been caught before midnight. As she braced for the worst, she opened her eyes to see Frey lying unconscious on the ground. Her friend quickly freed herself and urged Irina to escape with her while Frey was out cold. They fled immediately, with the friend remarking how lucky they were to get away, otherwise they would have faced a cruel fate. Left all alone, Frey opened his eyes and sighed. He had only been able to act so recklessly in front of Irina after everyone else left because of the emergency defense skill he had purchased. But thanks to his feigned drunkenness, he managed to earn more points. At midnight, emergency defense was triggered, and the system notified Frey that the midnight curse Irina had tried to cast on him would have killed him by noon the next day. However, that skill could only be used once a year, meaning she would be in a state of mana depletion for an entire year. Still lying on the floor, Frey realized he had been saved. But then Kanya walked in. Seeing him drunk, she angrily hauled him up and carried him on her back, just as he had demanded. While being carried home, Frey happily wished she would always be this disobedient, feeling that his recent behavior resembled a clown's. Yet, he used the situation to increase his life force. Kanya then coldly told him that he was still a scumbag, adding that if it weren't for her sister, she would have killed him on the spot. Her icy words pierced Frey's heart as he recalled how close they had been in their previous life as children, and how she had always been by his side. But now, she warned him to watch his back, promising that as soon as she secured her sister's safety, she would undoubtedly snuff the life out of him. That evening, Kanya arrived at Frey's dorm and dropped him. When he tried to shoo her away, she boldly declared that from now on, she would be living with him. Shocked, he asked what she was talking about. She replied that she had received special orders from the Duke. The Duke had instructed her to never let him out of her sight, or she would be expelled. With that said, Kanya made her bed and started getting ready for sleep. While she was preparing for bed, Frey checked the system and was shocked to find a few new rules that had just been updated, which could result in a game over for him. Looking through them, he discovered that he had no choice but to attend the academy diligently and regularly. He also found out that this time, the death of even one of the main heroines would not be overlooked. But the most intriguing rule was that he was not allowed to die in any situation other than the final battle. Frey spent the rest of the night pondering the new conditions the game had just introduced. The next morning, when Kanya tried to wake Frey up to get ready for class, he yelled at her to leave him alone. Surprisingly, she agreed and headed for the door, forcing him to call her back. Mid-yell, he suddenly started coughing up blood. He instantly realized he must have given away too much life force the previous day. Kanya tried to see what was wrong, but Frey immediately brushed it off. He then got closer and started scolding her for trying to leave the room before he had given the order. He humiliated her so badly, comparing her loyalty to a machine that couldn't move on its own. He then threatened to make her younger sister his mistress if she had a problem with that. At this point, Kanya burst into tears as she pleaded for her sister. Frey then smiled like a true villain as he walked out of the room. As a result of his cruel act, the system rewarded him with 10 points, while also pointing out that he had acted too out of character. After he left, Kanya noticed some blood on his bedsheets, wondering if Frey had a pre-existing illness. Later that day, while Miss Iseret, their teacher, was introducing herself to the students, Frey and Kanya barged into the classroom. Seeing them late, Miss Iseret immediately reprimanded them for their behavior, deducting 10 points from each of them. As expected, Frey blamed Kanya, calling her slow, unexpectedly. Irina, who happened to be in the same class, recognized Frey and completely panicked. Recalling how she almost used magic on him the day before, after the first period, Firoz, who was also in the class, approached Frey and asked if he would follow her to a secluded area so she could bless him. Fortunately, Frey had received a notification about her murderous intent from the system, so he rejected her offer on the spot. She tried to persuade him, claiming her blessing wasn't the kind you could buy with money, but Frey simply walked away. At the venue for the second period, Miss Iseret announced they would be participating in combat training. She then ordered the students to step up one by one to duel her. As expected, she demonstrated the power of a teacher, taking down all the students without breaking a sweat. Finally, it was Kanya's turn, and she stepped into the ring. When the match began, Kanya proved she was different from the other students, holding her own exceptionally well against the teacher. However, for some reason, something still felt off. Kanya was known to end things quickly to avoid mana depletion, but this time, she seemed to be dragging out the fight on purpose. And since there was a limit to how much life force Frey could share from a distance, it wouldn't be long before he started feeling drained from the prolonged battle. While Frey felt his life force slipping away, Kanya casually enjoyed her match with the teacher. After fighting for a while, Miss Iseret remarked that Kanya had far exceeded her expectations, and that she was eager to see how long the girl could last in a real battle against her. She lunged forward to continue, but Kanya stopped her right then and there. She explained that she was born with unstable mana, and if she kept fighting, she would lose control immediately. Impressed, Miss Iseret now understood why the girl had fought so cautiously from the start. She then commented that Kanya had the potential to become one of the most powerful mages in the land. Frey, on the other hand, was just glad the match was over. If Kanya had dragged it out any longer, there was a high chance he wouldn't have survived. When it was almost his turn, Frey got excited and put on a pendant containing an evil artifact to amplify his power. Next up, Irina faced Miss Iseret, but was defeated instantly due to the lingering effects of the curse she had cast on Frey the day before. She was then taken to the infirmary. When it was Firoz's turn, she forfeited, claiming it was inappropriate to use her power against a teacher. Finally, it was Frey's turn. Our protagonist smiled wickedly as he stepped onto the stage, having prepared a cruel scheme to earn more points. As soon as he arrived, he tried to provoke Miss Iseret by speaking rudely to her, but that only made her more focused as she challenged him to give it his all. With the help of the artifact, Frey attacked the teacher, forcing her on the defensive, much to the students' surprise. Miss Iseret tried her best to resist, but it was ultimately useless as Frey easily knocked her weapon away. Right after that, Firoz noticed something strange and drew everyone's attention to the demonic energy seemingly radiating from the pendant. An investigation was launched immediately, confirming her suspicion. Following this discovery, chaos erupted among the students, exactly as Frey had intended. As a result, the system rewarded him with 2,000 villain points. However, Miss Iseret was furious about the cruel stunt Frey had just pulled. She summoned him to her office at once. Once there, she interrogated him thoroughly, demanding to know why he had decided to bring a demonic artifact into the academy. But Frey merely replied that she was overreacting, claiming he had simply brought an item along. Miss Iseret then asked Frey what had truly happened to him, noting that he wasn't always this apathetic. And for a brief moment, Frey began to feel remorse. But he quickly snapped out of it, rambling about how he had to adapt to a society that didn't value emotions. He boldly declared that living honestly was something only fools did. Surprisingly, Miss Iseret decided to let the incident slide, since it was his first offense. In exchange, she demanded he take her to the shop where he bought it, as she intended to destroy everything there. Frey agreed, telling her he had a few other items to buy before leaving. After he left, Miss Iseret wondered what could have changed him so drastically in such a short amount of time. That evening, when Frey returned to the dorm, Kanya greeted him warmly. And as expected, he spoke to her condescendingly before going to bed. He then noticed a black cat stuffed toy, which she claimed she received from her younger sister, but he paid it no mind. A few hours later, when Kanya finally fell asleep, Frey got up and decided to replenish her with enough life force to last her through the next day. Little did he know, Kanya had actually transferred her consciousness into the stuffed toy to monitor his actions. Ever since she noticed the blood on Frey's bedsheets, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something from her. So she had used her dark magic to create the stuffed toy earlier, allowing her to spy on him more conveniently. Seeing him approach her body, Kanya concluded that Frey was definitely up to no good. She watched as he placed his hand on her bare stomach like a pervert, infuriating her so much that she swore to kill him once she returned to her body. After observing him for a while, she noticed he seemed to be in pain during whatever process he was doing. But she didn't think much of it. Moments later, Frey finished the process and stood up, leaving Kanya stunned as she had assumed he had ulterior motives. Suddenly, he turned toward the stuffed toy and walked over to pick it up. At this point, Kanya began to sweat, believing she had been exposed. To her surprise, Frey simply picked it up and started cuddling it like a child, revealing a side of him she had never known. The next morning, Frey was woken up by Kanya's groans. When he asked her, she revealed she was experiencing severe stomach pain. Misjudging the situation, Frey yelled at her, telling her to go to the bathroom and calling her disgusting. Following the incident, the system rewarded him with 200 points for misinterpreting the situation. Thanks to the accumulated points, the system informed Frey that he had leveled up from the beginner stage to the intermediate stage. A shop where he could purchase additional items was also unlocked. Wasting no time, he browsed through the items in the shop and started shopping. Meanwhile, a new notification popped up from the system, alerting him of a new quest. It required him to prevent an upcoming attack on the dormitories. Upon completing the quest, he would be rewarded with the awakening of the hero's weapon. On the other hand, the penalty for failure would be a massive reduction in his life force and lifespan. Seeing the quest, Frey concluded he needed to quickly buy some essential items. A while later, Miss Iseret arrived at the dorm, and Frey ordered Kanya to open the door. When Kanya opened it, Miss Iseret was shocked to see her in Frey's room. When she asked about it, Kanya revealed that she had received permission from the Duke to share a room with Frey, leaving her even more astounded. She stormed in immediately, asking why Frey would agree to such a thing. But Frey seized the opportunity to tease her about still being a virgin at her age. His words cut deep, leaving the teacher petrified, and as expected, the system rewarded him for it. Afterward, Kanya immediately tried to explain that nothing was going on between her and Frey, but Frey had already escorted the teacher out of the room. They then disguised themselves and headed to the shop he had mentioned to her. Along the way, they spotted some nobles severely oppressing the poor, which filled Miss Iseret with deep-seated disgust. She decided that after destroying the shop, she would definitely deal with those nobles next. Eventually, they arrived at a dilapidated building, which Frey pointed out as the shop. Wasting no time, Miss Iseret charged in to begin her mission. While waiting for her outside, Frey noticed a group of commoners trying to traffic some young girls, so he decided to intervene. Frey overheard the traffickers commenting on how pleased their master would be, so he tailed them. He soon arrived at a brothel and watched the girls being dragged inside. As he tried to enter, he was stopped by two muscular men who told him that a brothel was no place for a kid like him. Wasting no time, Frey handed them some money, and the men shamelessly dropped to their knees as they cleared the way for him. Once Frey was inside, he was met by a young madam who handed him a magazine full of pictures of various women, asking him to pick his type. But Frey told her he wanted to see the real goods before making a decision. The madam told him that was impossible because that wasn't how they operated. But Frey came prepared. He handed her a large sum of money, taking her by surprise. Seeing the cash, her eyes immediately lit up, and she began leading him through a secret underground passage to show him the women. While the madam led the way, Frey glanced at her stats and was shocked to discover that this woman was a subordinate of the Demon King, the Succubus Queen. However, he decided to play along to achieve his goal. Finally, they arrived at a dingy dungeon where numerous beautiful women were being held hostage. Upon their arrival, the madam announced they had a guest and forced the women to smile. As expected, all the women forced fake smiles as they greeted Frey, but it was painfully obvious they were suffering. The madam asked Frey if the sight was too bizarre for him, but he replied that it was fine. He then told her he didn't find any of the women appealing because he was attracted to younger girls. The madam hesitated for a moment, but Frey handed her another bag of coins, which helped her make up her mind instantly. The madam quickly led Frey to a corner of the room, where a secret passage in the wall was revealed. While she tried to open it for him, Frey shoved her aside and stormed into the passage. The corridor led him to a dark room where he saw a group of children locked in a cage with a magic circle nearby. Everything became clear to Frey in that moment. The Succubus Queen was trying to use the children as sacrifices to summon the Demon King. The children spotted him immediately. They started crying, calling out to Frey for help. Right then, the Succubus Queen, now fully transformed, arrived with her shadow soldiers and ordered them to capture Frey, as he was quickly becoming a thorn in their grand plan. Frey then put on a mask to completely conceal his identity as he drew his weapon. In the blink of an eye, he wiped out all the soldiers at lightning speed. Only the Succubus Queen remained. As he slowly approached her, she begged for her life, offering to serve him for the rest of her days, as long as he spared her. But Frey replied that he didn't make deals with child abusers and executed her on the spot. After saving the children, Frey gave them some money for food and told them to go straight home without loitering, and they scurried off. He then received a system notification about his reward for completing a sudden quest. Looking over the notification, Frey wondered why the reward he received was quite meager compared to what he expected. He was then interrupted by one of the children returning to thank him. Looking at the child, Frey discovered through her stats that she had immense potential to become a powerful mage, so he decided to bestow his reward upon her. Receiving the gift, the girl asked for his name, hoping to repay his kindness someday. But Frey told her not to worry about it, claiming he was simply doing a hero's duty. As he left, he instructed her to make sure she learned magic so she could become a top-tier mage, and she promised she would. She resolved that no matter what, she would find him and repay his kindness in the future. Little did Frey know that this brief intervention would ultimately lead to a bigger picture, one that would later bring unimaginable changes to his story. When Frey returned, he saw that Miss Iseret had already destroyed the shop. Seeing him, she asked where he had been, but he calmly replied that he had been wandering around a bit. He then told her about an upcoming auction at the Information Guild. When Miss Iseret heard about the dark magic artifact being put up for sale, her eyes lit up, and she immediately began pressing him for the location. However, her hopes were dashed when Frey told her about a barrier erected around the auction house to keep out anyone without a ticket. Fortunately, since he had a ticket, he revealed that she could bypass the barrier as long as she registered as his lover. A few hours later, the two arrived at the venue under the guise of a couple. As they took their seats, all Frey could think about was securing that artifact. And since no one else knew about the stone's incredible properties, he believed it wouldn't be too hard to obtain. Suddenly, he sensed a familiar aura nearby. Following the trace, he was surprised to spot Kania in the auction hall, also in disguise. Shortly after, Glanna sat down next to him without realizing who he was, leaving him even more shocked. As if that wasn't enough, he also discovered that Firoz was attending the auction as well. Seeing that 3 of the main heroines had shown up for the very item he was after, Frey realized their common goal must be to use the artifact to subdue him. A few minutes later, the artifact was unveiled, along with its undeniable power to suppress targets and control their minds. With that, the bidding started at 1 gold coin. Frey, knowing that possessing the artifact was the only way he could complete his main quest, decided to bid 15 gold. However, he was intercepted by Kanya, who bid 20 gold right after him. To their surprise, Firoz suddenly drove the price up to 10,000 gold. It turned out she had messed up her zeros. The auctioneer was about to close the deal, but luckily for her, Frey bid 11,000 gold. A random, wealthy man in the crowd suddenly took an interest in the artifact and caught Frey off guard with a bid of 12,000 gold. Unwilling to give up, Frey bid higher. But the man kept raising his price as well. After a brief bidding war, the artifact was sold to Frey, who had paid a whopping 55,000 gold. As soon as the deal was sealed, Kanya prepared a powerful dark spell she intended to use to steal the artifact. Thinking fast, Frey lunged forward to protect his property, but was interrupted by Glanna's fire kick, sending him flying across the room. Since Frey was in disguise, Glanna couldn't recognize him, so she demanded to know who he was. Instead of answering, Frey simply drew her attention to the fact that nearly half her dress had been burned away. Realizing this, an embarrassed Glanna accused him of being a pervert. She was then joined by Firoz, who accused Frey of being a minion of the Demon King. Without giving him a chance to defend himself, she unleashed a devastating attack that should have obliterated him. But to her surprise, Frey managed to escape unscathed. The two girls then decided to team up and take him down together. Before they could act, however, the wealthy man from the audience simply walked past them, instantly knocking them both unconscious. He then dropped his disguise, revealing himself to Frey as a great demon, wondering why Eukaryotes had decided to show himself. Frey asked what he wanted. Eukaryotes revealed how dissatisfied he was that Frey had obtained the precious artifact instead of him. He believed he was the rightful owner of the treasure, as it was the only tool that could help him enhance his power. Frey then realized that perhaps in his previous life, he himself had been the one to take it. Suddenly, he noticed Miss Iseret fighting Kanya with all her might, which was incredibly strange. Eukaryotes then revealed he had cast a spell on Iseret when she tried to attack him. After holding her ground for a while, Kanya was finally overpowered by Iseret, who was moving in for the killing blow. Right then, Frey went into God mode, drew his sword, and beheaded Eukaryotes in the blink of an eye. Surprisingly, even though the caster was defeated, the spell's effects remained, forcing him to intervene. Just before Iseret could deliver the finishing blow to Kanya, Frey threw himself between them, acting as a human shield, and took a severe wound in her place. Kanya asked who he was and why he was helping her, but Frey ignored her. With the injury he had just sustained, he knew he was no match for Iseret, so he attempted a special attack that instantly dispelled the spell's effects, knocking Iseret unconscious. Frey then used his last ounce of strength to dash out of the building and head straight back to his dorm. Moments later, Glanna and Firoz woke up and were shocked to see the corpse of a demon next to them. Regardless, they told Kanya about their subjugation alliance aimed at Frey, asking if she wanted to join, and as expected, she agreed. Glanna then suddenly started scolding Firoz for the mistake she had made in her previous life, which had made it easy for Frey to defeat them. Meanwhile, Kanya found a star-shaped brooch that looked remarkably similar to Frey's. That evening, when Frey returned to his dorm, he immediately bandaged his wound and put on clothes to hide it carefully. As he did, he wondered why he had to cross paths with a subordinate of the Demon King, as well as 3 of the main heroines all in one night. Soon after, Kanya arrived and Frey tried to spout his usual insults, but she ignored him and asked where he had been earlier. Frey rudely replied that he had gone shopping with Iseret and then went to bed. Kanya then revealed that she had seen someone who not only looked exactly like him, but was also carrying his sword in the back alley earlier. Frey was caught off guard, but realizing she had no concrete proof, he decided to keep denying it. Kanya then came up with an idea. She showed him the brooch she had found, claiming he had left it behind in the dorm before going out with Iseret earlier. As expected, Frey fell for the trap and snatched the brooch from her hand. Kanya then revealed that she had actually found it at the auction house. Realizing his identity had been exposed, Frey started to panic. Right then, she checked his back and noticed the bandages, which confirmed her suspicions. Kanya tried to find out why he had saved her, but before Frey could answer, he received a penalty from the system that drastically reduced his lifespan and life force while inflicting excruciating pain. Seeing the young master writhing in agony and coughing up blood, Kanya began to panic. After Frey collapsed, Kanya treated his wounds, realizing her actions were wrong, as she could have easily just left him to die. Thus, she resolved to ask him why he had helped her, believing she could always kill him after getting her answer. With that in mind, she cast her dark magic on him and peered into his subconscious to uncover the truth. That way, she would know everything going on in Frey's mind. When she opened her eyes within his mindscape, she was shocked by how pure and peaceful the place was, a stark contrast to the persona Frey had always portrayed. As she looked around, Kanya spotted a younger version of Frey greeting her nervously, so she activated her magic and yelled at the boy, demanding to know if he was the master of the subconscious. She then tied him up, believing he was dangerous, and told him she had placed a vow of truth on him, so he had to swear to answer honestly. The boy immediately swore the oath, and Kanya released him. She then asked why Frey had helped her, and the boy replied that it was because she was very important to him. Kanya didn't understand, so she asked what he meant, given how cruelly Frey had always treated her. But the boy explained that there was a valid reason for his behavior, and that Frey often sacrificed his own life force to help her. Surprised by this revelation, Kanya froze. Seeing her reaction, the boy decided it was best to show her Frey's true self. So he revealed Frey's real motive, to save her and the entire world, which meant he had no choice but to act despicable. It was then she finally understood that the reason Frey collapsed was because she had discovered he saved her, causing her to fall to her knees and cry as the truth sank in. The master of the subconscious comforted her, telling her not to blame herself. After all, he could endure being hated. With that, the mindscape shattered, and Kanya returned to the real world. A few hours later, Frey woke up to find Kanya sobbing beside him, realizing that she must have discovered his secret. Since there was no point in lying to her anymore, he confessed, explaining that he was bound by a powerful vow despite his true desire to save the world. Therefore, he had to commit evil deeds to gain strength. But if he was caught doing good deeds, his lifespan would be shortened. Hearing the truth straight from his mouth made Kanya realize why he had treated her so poorly. Even so, Frey told her that he had used her for his own goals, and she should never forgive him, as his actions were unjustifiable. She disagreed, saying there was a reason behind it all. After all, he had been transferring his life force to her every single night, and he was shocked to learn she knew about it. He then asked what she was going to do now that his secret was out, and Kanya told him she would continue to serve him as she always had, because she wouldn't have peace of mind until she repaid him. Frey had anticipated she would say something like that, so he let her have her way. Later at a cat cafe, Princess Glana arranged a meeting with Firas and Kanya under the pretext of keeping their plan to eliminate Frey a secret. Since they couldn't get their hands on the Domination Stone, their plan was to exploit Frey's weaknesses and restrict his actions. As the two girls discussed their desires, Kanya secretly thought about acting as a double agent to help Frey, but she soon realized how powerless she was against the strings of fate, so she decided to start small. The first thing on her mind was to cook him a proper meal because she wanted to see Frey smile, even if only for a brief moment. Kanya prepared breakfast for Frey, and he not only told her how delicious it was, but also that he had been wanting to do this for a very long time. Soon after, Frey announced he was going to transfer life force to her. She worried about him, but he reassured her that everything was fine, and he wouldn't let her die. Left with no choice, she agreed, but pleaded with him not to overdo it. She sat and watched him struggle as he transferred his life force. Noticing how the penalty was ravaging his body, suddenly Kanya experienced a sharp pain in her stomach, and Frey realized his pure mana and her dark magic were mixing, so he absorbed the mixed magic, ignoring her warnings. Moments later, her pain subsided. It was then she noticed that his left arm had become infected, but he told her not to worry since it wasn't his dominant arm, so it wouldn't be a big issue. Still, Kanya was anxious that his arm would be difficult to heal, but Frey told her not to mind because it would return to normal once everything was over. She looked saddened by the thought, and they got ready to head to school. Frey noticed that his condition was terrible, but he had accumulated a massive amount of points at the academy, and thanks to that, he had acquired all the available skill items and could now focus on the main quest. Upon accepting the main quest, he was tasked with fighting and defeating Arena in the midterm exam. Winning would reward him with the awakening of the hero's weapon. However, this quest was optional, so he could skip it since it wouldn't affect the storyline. He analyzed the quests and realized that the nobles who lost to Arena would attack the commoner dormitories, but he could alter his role depending on whether he chose to win, lose, or escape from Arena. He could choose to avoid the match and frame someone else as the villain, making him the mastermind, or he could fight her and either win to claim the reward or intentionally lose. Looking at the options, Frey chose the path where he became the villain to fulfill the prophecy. Miss Iseret concluded the class by advising the students to prepare thoroughly so they wouldn't fail, instructing them to pair up and report back by the next class. As she dismissed the class, Frey was lost in thought, wondering what to do since Arena had no chance of defeating him. He then walked outside, only to see some annoying nobles bullying Arena and her friend for running away when they were meant to be Frey's sacrifices. Seeing them, Frey didn't scold the nobles. Instead, he praised them for taking action without his orders. As the nobles happily clung to him when he mentioned he was thinking about Arena, he walked over to her and asked why she had run away, but Arena's friend retorted that she wasn't foolish enough to stay. Frey brushed her aside and demanded Arena accept his deal. The winner of the exam would get to make the loser do whatever they wanted. Her friend immediately chimed in, saying she didn't trust him, but Frey reminded her he was talking to Arena, unless she herself wanted to face him in the exam. Realizing his intent, she went quiet and Arena agreed to fight him. He then promised to give her 1,000 gold if she won, but if she lost, she would become his slave. With that, he pulled out a cursed skull pendant to forge a life-and-death vow, bluntly stating that commoners were known to break their promises. This surprised the nobles and infuriated Arena so much that she ignored her friend's warning and agreed to the pact. So she pulled out her own pendant, and once the skulls merged, chains shot out from them and pierced their hearts. Frey then spoke arrogantly in front of her, leaving the nobles in awe of his audacity. He then turned to them and told them to keep their hands off these two commoners, advising them to follow his example as someone who refused to take advantage of others. With that settled, the nobles wouldn't bother Arena anymore since he was paired with her. The problem now was how to lose to her while she was weakened from mana depletion, and he knew that losing intentionally wouldn't be easy. As he walked away, the system rewarded him with 500 points for the pact, and unlocked a new skill shop with additional options. Looking at the new skill, which allowed him to transfer mana, Frey realized he could transfer mana to Arena to counter her depletion. After purchasing the mana transfer skill, noting that it would cover the main quest with Arena, Frey saw he still had some points left, wondering if he should buy another skill. He checked the catalog and found a skill that could slightly persuade others if he lied, so he bought it, believing it would be useful for the many lies he'd have to tell in the future. He then shamelessly claimed to be a woman just to test it out. Unbeknownst to him, Firaz overheard this and was utterly shocked. So she rushed off with a massive misunderstanding. Initially, Frey planned to chase after her to clear things up, but he eventually brushed it off, thinking there was no harm done. At the school's training ground 3 days later, Frey watched Arena through the bushes, noticing how hard she was training despite her low mana. Her friend tried to warn her not to overdo it, but Arena was determined to perfect a magic attack she believed could secure her victory against Frey. Little did she know he was moved to tears witnessing her dedication. After a while of struggling, she successfully conjured the fireballs, and Frey was highly impressed by her ability to create fire with such a meager amount of mana, prompting him to promise he'd give her some of his magic. Unfortunately, the effort completely exhausted Arena, so her friend tended to her and offered to help her indirectly, suspecting Frey was up to some tricks. Hearing this, an idea sparked in Frey's mind, and he was thrilled that he might be able to pull it off through Arena's friend. But then, Arena rejected her friend's offer, stating she wanted to win with her own strength, and if they teamed up, she'd be no better than Frey. Frustrated by Arena's stubbornness, her friend walked back to the dorm with her, wishing Arena had accepted the offer. Frey wished the same, as it would have made his plan much easier to execute. Suddenly, a pigeon arrived carrying a note, and upon reading it, Frey realized it was a letter from Firaz, who claimed to know his secret. In the letter, she demanded he meet her at the church, leading him to call her a nuisance. At noon, Frey arrived struggling with the heavy door and found Firaz praying by a box nearby. Seeing him, she bent down to retrieve something from the box and demanded to know how he dared deceive her all this time. Confused, he wondered why he wasn't collapsing or coughing up blood if she had truly uncovered his real identity. But to his surprise, she pulled out a maid outfit and told him that rumors of him being a woman would shake the world. Dumbfounded by her claim, he wondered why she was holding a maid outfit. But then she told him that if he became her personal maid, she would keep his secret safe. That was when Frey connected the dots and realized she had fully bought into the misunderstanding. So he calmly tried to walk away, telling her to do whatever she wanted. Unfortunately for him, the foolish girl refused to let him go, poking at him and commenting that his body was far too flat for his earlier claim. Insulted, he told her he was a man, but Firaz didn't believe him. Instead, she demanded he let her check, but he yelled at her, calling it a crime. It took her a few seconds to process everything, and when she realized Frey actually was a man, she felt deeply embarrassed. As she watched him leave, Firaz pointed out that everything could have gone smoothly, and she could have saved him from being killed if he had just been a woman. Instantly, she grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the floor, crying as she revealed that Glenna had found his weakness and was planning to execute him. Meanwhile, she was the one trying to save him. If he had just quietly followed her, everything would have been fine. Now, Firaz had no choice but to end his life herself. As Frey was being choked, he realized Firaz was merely taking her anger out on him. So he played dead, leading her to believe she had actually killed him. Consequently, she labeled herself a criminal and promised to reunite with him in the afterlife soon, raising her mana-infused hand prepared to end her own life. Suddenly, the system warned Frey that he had to protect her from one fatal blow per day. He immediately screamed for her to stop, and she was shocked to see him alive. She ramped up her magic, ready to strike him again, but he pressed a button on his shirt, which played back a recording of her confessing Glenna's plot to kill him. He angrily made it clear that he wasn't foolish enough to come empty-handed, then walked right up to her, pointing out that he had proof of her and the princess's murder conspiracy. That meant if they found out, she would be in massive trouble. As a result, he blackmailed her, forcing her to work for him by wearing the maid outfit she had bought and cleaning his room. Even though she had cleaned the place 5 times, Frey insisted she do it one more time. Frustrated, she yelled at him, but he simply played the recording again, so she started sweeping until she collapsed from exhaustion, declaring she couldn't take it anymore. Frey then threatened to assign her another task, like night service, but she told him she'd rather let the rumor spread than do that. He immediately shut her down and was rewarded 500 points for being a terrible master. Shortly after, he reminded her that she was the one who begged him not to spread the rumor, promising she would do anything for him. He went back to his seat and glared at her, telling her she should obediently follow orders if she didn't want to see hell. Surprised and annoyed by his recent actions, Firaz yelled at him, wondering what had changed him from the kind person he used to be, but he dismissed her words as just acting pitiful. Firaz then reminded him of a time he had given her a potion when she was injured, but Frey had no idea what she was talking about. Suddenly, a memory flashed in his mind of Firaz holding a potion, and he wondered where that memory came from. Firaz then changed her tune, accepting that Frey was nothing but absolute trash. She picked up her broom to resume cleaning, and Frey realized that all the lingering affection she had for him was gone. Now, she harbored only negative feelings toward him. Frey didn't mind her attitude because in a few months, anyone showing affection toward him would face a penalty. That evening, Frey returned to his dorm, and Kanya noticed he had been drinking, so she asked him why, especially since he had been having nightmares recently. Frey reassured her that he had faced similar consequences in his past life, telling her to lie down so he could transfer some life force to her. Kanya quietly obeyed and unbuttoned her shirt, which embarrassed him. So he clarified that he didn't actually need to touch her stomach to transfer magic. Kanya felt there was no reason to change how they did it. But when Frey mentioned how awkward it was for him to have to look away, she finally realized that he was, in fact, a young man. Flustered, she stammered in agreement and lay down on his bed. Soon after, he transferred his magic to her, and during the process, he learned that she had entered his subconscious when he passed out the other day. Knowing the truth made Frey happy, but he told her not to overdo it. After all, he had done terrible things in his past life. However, Kanya stood her ground, knowing that in both timelines Frey had risked his life to save her. That night, while Frey was sleeping, Kanya noticed he was having a nightmare. She swore to help him, feeling it was the least she could do since she couldn't save him directly. She began by picking up her cat-stuffed toy, realizing it was the perfect disguise to help Frey since it wasn't human. With that, she initiated the ritual and entered his subconscious mind. Inside, Frey wandered aimlessly, trying to figure out where he was, when he spotted a very familiar-looking black cat. He picked it up and told it to tag along. Suddenly, he noticed a thick fog around him, and peering through it, he saw his younger self talking to a young Firoz. Frey wondered if it was just a dream, but he continued watching them. Firoz, on the other hand, didn't recognize him and demanded to know why he had given her a potion, to which he introduced himself and said it was only natural to help someone in need. Firoz refused to believe him, claiming young Frey was a liar. This thoroughly confused the older Frey watching, as he didn't remember meeting her outside the slums for the first time. It was supposed to be at the church. Young Frey concluded that her suspicion was normal, so he told her he would leave the potions and she was free to do whatever she wanted with them. Curious, she asked where he was going, and he pointed toward the church, saying he was heading there. As he walked away, he remarked that while he might not be a good person, the people in the church could be trusted. Firoz told him to wait, but young Frey kept walking, leaving her all alone. She noted that he didn't seem like a bad person, but she had no idea what he was thinking. As the fog around her dissipated, she turned to stone. Frey concluded it wasn't just a dream. He recalled shutting her down earlier and realized that while Firoz might be an idiot, she couldn't lie. What he had just witnessed perfectly matched her explanation, and it felt too real to just be a dream. Instead, it was likely something that had actually happened. He grew confused, wondering if someone had manipulated his memories. Her words had triggered his recollection of the event. Suddenly, a dark fog gathered around him, giving him a deeply ominous feeling. The next scene he saw was a heavily injured Firoz, bound and bleeding not just from her wounds, but also from her eyes and mouth. Drifting in the dark abyss, Frey realized he was in a terrible situation and began searching for a way out. Just then, he heard a voice asking how long he planned to sleep, urging him to wake up. When he looked up, he was horrified to see the bloody corpse of Firoz smiling at him while chained to a log, weapons impaled in her body, calling him the criminal who inflicted that pain upon her. Frey trembled in absolute terror. But things got even crazier when the bloody corpse of Glanna appeared behind him, asking if he enjoyed killing people. As he noticed a pool of blood staining his hands, he wondered where it came from, only to see the terrifying, bloody undead versions of Kanya and Serena right in front of him. When he cried out for help, undead Kanya asked if him getting his wish of her dying for him made him happy, which only made him beg even more desperately for someone to save him. However, the undead girls swarmed him and dragged him into a dark portal. In the real world, Kanya bit him in her cat form as she desperately tried to wake him up, but he wouldn't stir, and she realized his subconscious mind was spiraling out of control. As she frantically tried to pull him away from the dark portal, she feared the young master would be turned into an undead, just like the girls in his dream. Since her intention was to save him, she had to do something, but realized she couldn't do it properly in the body of a cat. As Frey fell into the abyss, a blinding light suddenly shone down from above, and when he opened his eyes, he found himself in another dimension, one far more heavenly than the last. As he tried to figure out where he was, he heard a voice saying they had arrived just in time, making him wonder who was speaking to him. Suddenly, a woman appeared before him, glowing like a goddess as she expressed her relief at having infused her power into his subconscious earlier. Frey realized it was his mother, and she gently pulled him into a hug, telling him that her final gift to him was to ensure he wouldn't be tormented by nightmares for a while. As tears streamed down Frey's face, she told him that the path he had chosen was thorny, and warned him that things wouldn't always go his way. However, she added that when things get tough, he needed to remember what was truly important to him and what he genuinely wanted to protect. In the real world, Kanya woke up from her sleep, immediately worried about the young master. When she sprang up to check on him, she found him perfectly fine, reading a book as if nothing had happened. She asked if he was okay in his dream, which made him realize she was the cat from the dream. He thanked her for giving him some relief, but she apologized for not being able to help more. He then revealed that he had met his mother, the Duchess, in the dream world, and that she had told him to remember what he wanted to protect whenever he felt lost. However, Frey was terrified because his memories had been manipulated, and he didn't know who to trust anymore. Even the prophecy book he relied on could be a complete lie. Yet Kanya hugged him from behind and told him to trust her. As he held her hand, she acknowledged that he had worked harder than anyone else for the sake of others, and reassured him that even if his memories were manipulated and all his efforts seemed in vain, she would never forget his admirable way of life. In that moment, Frey remembered that he had chosen his path, knowing it would be difficult, because he was determined to protect those he cared about. With tears running down his cheeks, he realized this was no time to be discouraged. Even if he failed, his efforts wouldn't be for nothing. A few days later at the academy, Iseret announced that the midterm exams were about to begin and instructed the students to step up one by one. As the students went up, Frey felt grateful that nothing had happened since his last clash at the academy, as he was finally ready to face Irina. The system warned him that overusing mana transfer through physical contact could lead to mana depletion and unconsciousness. As Glana and Firaz prepared to fight, Iseret informed them that forfeiting would not be allowed this time. But Firaz told her not to worry, as she had no intention of doing so. She then focused mana around her body, while Glana gathered her magic at the tip of her index finger. Seeing this, Frey realized the ladies were plotting something, but he reassured himself with the fact that they couldn't attack him from that distance. As Glana's mana intensified, Firaz prepared to launch a powerful punch. When Glana fired her attack, Firaz punched it backward. As the attack approached, Frey finally realized the girls had planned to kill him all along. But fortunately, Iseret blocked the attack with her sword. She then warned them that they would be disqualified if the attack on Frey was intentional. Left with no choice, the girls had to settle things between themselves. When Firaz tried to punch Glana, she dodged and unleashed a barrage of lightning-fast strikes, sending Firaz crashing to the ground. Seeing this, Iseret declared Glana the winner and called Frey and Irina up for the next match. As Frey stepped up, Glana warned him not to try too hard, but he said it was fine since they had already practiced how to lose gracefully. When Irina and Frey entered the arena, she started provoking him, but he fired back with his own coy remarks as he prepared to put on a show. Standing opposite each other, Frey gathered mana around himself, and Irina prepared to incinerate him with a fire attack. When Iseret signaled the start of the match, Frey charged at Irina, but she summoned 7 fireballs to block his path, a feat he thought was impossible. However, the fireballs fizzled out as she started coughing, and he explained that this was the result of overusing her power. He decided to stick to his original attack plan, using his mana-transferring hand to pin her head to the ground. Looking down at her, he called her a pathetic insect and resolved to share a portion of his magic with her. While he was torturing her with mana, she successfully summoned a fireball behind him and struck his back. As he rolled around in pain, she scolded him for hurting a woman and summoned a massive fireball to finish him off. However, Frey was confident in a blow he had landed, and suddenly Irina's brain began to overheat. Out of nowhere, her fireball vanished, and she collapsed to the ground, prompting Iseret to announce that Frey would win if she couldn't get up in 10 seconds. As she began the countdown, Frey worried he had overdone it by pouring all his mana into the attack, considering a single strike would have sufficed. Irina realized she was in trouble because, despite her mana recovering, she still couldn't stand up right away. Suddenly, a glowing magic circle appeared around them, and Frey panicked when he recognized it as a teleportation spell. He tried to figure out what was happening, but was teleported to another location along with Irina. Seeing this, Iseret instructed the other students to stay put, as she hadn't detected the spell before it activated, and there could be other traps in the area. A student from the back read a piece of paper she found and realized it was a recovery scroll. Meanwhile, Frey and Irina appeared in a strange forest, and the hero worried that his plan had failed due to a series of unexpected disasters. When he checked on Irina, he was relieved that she was only unconscious, not dead. As he sat on the ground, he realized they were in the most monster-infested forest on the continent, known as the Grey Forest. He wondered if an injured hero and a mana-depleted mage could survive in this condition. But then he remembered that the cause of their teleportation was a girl with a scroll named Ariani. Since the chance of her trying to help with that scroll was very low, he assumed it was a mistake and decided to ask her about it later. As he looked at Irina on the ground, he started thinking of a way out of the forest. The system inventory suggested an item called the Mask of Deception, which could hide his identity from those nearby and even alter his voice. He put on the mask and felt grateful for the system's adjustment, as it would keep him from being recognized even at close range. After waking Irina up, he told her they needed to escape that dangerous place immediately. When she asked what was going on, he lied that she had been sent there by Frey using a teleportation scroll, reassuring her that she was safe while urging her to hurry. However, she was still confused by everything happening, and when she asked who he was, he lied that he was an intelligence agent of the Starlight family who had been left behind in the forest after falling ill. To make the story more convincing, he claimed Frey had brought him there to silence him when he asked to resign, knowing that death was the only way out. Hearing this, Irina concluded that Frey had brought her there to die, and a disgusted Frey lied that the sword he was carrying was left behind by an old exploration party who mistook him for a ghost. He told her to follow him to a nearby safe place, claiming that Frey would soon return with reinforcements. But she told him to wait because she knew something was off about him, even though his story seemed plausible. Since she knew an ally of Frey would never help her, she thanked him and offered to go alone, pointing out that she was more than capable of protecting herself. Frey warned her that she was being reckless, but she claimed that even her remaining 10% mana was enough to protect herself as long as no high-tier monsters appeared. Just then, a giant bear appeared before her, leaving her frozen in shock as she wondered why a high-tier monster, which should only reside in remote areas, was right in front of her. As Irina trembled in fear, the giant bear roared loudly while swinging its claws at her, but Frey leaped from behind and delivered a brutal slash, splitting the bear in half. Irina was stunned by what she had just witnessed, and he explained that the reason he didn't want her going alone was because he knew dangerous high-tier monsters like the bear were lurking around. Right then, she warned him that danger was approaching from behind, and when he turned around, he saw a horde of goblins charging at them with weapons. This annoyed him, so he grabbed her hand and fled with her. As they ran forward, the goblins pursued them fiercely, but they finally reached a safe place where Irina asked him why there were high-tier monsters in that area. He informed her that the forest was home to all sorts of dangerous creatures, and when she noticed blood on his mask, he explained that his chronic illness was flaring up because he had overexerted himself in the fight against the bear. Seeing his mask covered in blood and him struggling to breathe, she offered to take off the mask and tried to do it herself. However, he brushed her hand away before she could touch it and apologized, saying he didn't want anyone to see his disfigured face. She chose to believe him and told him to wait there while she went to find some fruit for him, assuring him she was knowledgeable about such things. He warned her not to go too far for her own safety, and then she introduced herself, prompting him to introduce himself with the fake name Rihanna. She thanked him for saving her twice, but he said it was nothing, as he couldn't abandon someone sharing the same fate. As she went into the forest, she promised to return right away, and after she left, he took off the mask to reveal his injured face. Frey was thankful the monster had appeared because he wasn't entirely confident his fabricated story would be enough to fool her. But thanks to his heroic act, all her suspicions about him were cleared. Recalling his quest to defeat Irina in a match, he summoned the system to clarify what had happened, and it informed him that his victory status was still pending, and no penalty would be issued since skipping the quest didn't affect the story progression. He suspected the academy had suspended judgment due to the fact that the students had randomly disappeared, hence no penalty was given. He decided to put all his effort into finding a way out of the forest because it was filled with dangerous beasts, and one wrong step could cost him his life. After 3 days of walking together in the forest, Irina harvested some plants from the ground while thinking that she had no choice but to rely on Rihanna since she couldn't use magic. They foraged for food, avoiding monsters and other major problems until they finally reached the area near the forest's entrance. As Irina prepared dinner by the campfire, she realized Ariani must be very worried about her and resolved to apologize to her when she returned to the academy. Right then, Frey returned carrying a wild boar he had killed, which surprised her since she knew he was injured. But he told her not to worry as there were fewer monsters out there. While he was butchering the boar, she asked if he really planned to stay there, pointing out that he couldn't live there forever. But he said his answer hadn't changed and lied that due to his condition, he definitely wouldn't be able to escape Frey if he left. She promised to find a way to help him, but he said he didn't want to be a burden to her, adding that she wouldn't be able to take care of him when Frey came hunting for him again. When she frowned, he told her living in the forest wasn't too bad once you got used to it. After 3 days, she finally admitted defeat and agreed to let him stay in the forest. She then handed him some fruit to eat as an appetizer while the food was cooking. And though she was uncomfortable with the idea of leaving her savior behind, she knew he had his own reasons. Holding a weirdly shaped fruit, he asked her if it was an ice dragon fruit, but she didn't know what it was. He revealed it was something he loved to eat as a child, and that this fruit had another name he had given it, known only to him and a few others. Suddenly, the entire forest started shaking. Irina thought it was an earthquake, but he informed her it was something much worse, consisting of mutant monsters, failed chimera experiments, and various other monstrous forms. He assured her he couldn't handle them all, except for the dark golem, which not even the monster horde could defeat. As the dark golem approached them, Frey drew his sword and told Irina he couldn't fight while protecting someone else. As his aura flared up, he pointed his blade at the monster and told her to run while he bought her some time. Looking at her, Frey wondered if he could handle everything as well as he promised. The system then popped up, informing him that the dark golem had an unawakened energy absorption rate of 21%. He realized it was the final boss of the second half of the current scenario, as it absorbed the power of defeated enemies and was later retrieved by the Demon King's army. Seeing that the monster hadn't absorbed much energy yet, he assumed its current combat capability was equal to an army. And he realized he couldn't use his starlight magic as it would reveal his identity. Right then, the dark golem's eyes lit up as it locked onto him as a target, scanning them while calculating how to eliminate them. It initiated its attack by firing a powerful beam of energy straight at them. But Frey managed to protect himself as well as Irina just in time. He told Irina to run because there was no time left, but she argued back that she couldn't leave him behind. Seeing its attack fail, it resolved to bury them alive. The golem prepared to continue its pursuit. The masked hero told Irina he knew he didn't have much time left, but he wanted to use his last bit of energy to help her, as she was the only one who could take revenge on Frey on his behalf. At that moment, she flashed back to when Frey had saved her in a similar manner. With a bright smile on her face, she thanked him and promised never to forget this debt. As she ran off, she promised him she would definitely kill that cruel scumbag. And Frey silently thanked the heavens that his acting skills had gotten much better. As the dark golem approached him, radiating a terrifying aura from its body, Frey felt relieved that Irina had escaped. He charged his sword with a freezing bright aura and decided to go all out. Suddenly, alarm bells rang in the monster's head as its internal system warned of an emergency since target number 8, Irina, had escaped. When Frey lunged at the monster, he told it that he was its opponent and sliced off one of its legs, causing it to crash to the ground. While on the ground, the dark golem's system informed it that it had detected a balance system error and was searching for countermeasures. Since the monster's movements were restricted, Frey realized he needed to destroy the core to defeat it completely. But suddenly, the dark golem activated a missile launcher as a countermeasure. As a barrage of missiles flew toward Frey, he realized the demons didn't know the meaning of holding back. After reinforcing his sword with aura, he used powerful, lightning-fast slashes to destroy each missile. As the golem continuously fired more missiles, Frey paused to catch his breath, realizing he had to destroy the core soon, or the prolonged battle would prove fatal. Meanwhile, the dark golem updated his target data on its system to a level 1 high-risk target and executed its self-destruct code. As the dark golem gathered dark energy, Frey realized that he and Irina would be in grave danger if it self-destructed, so he dashed forward to find a way to stop it. Then, he leaped into the air and plunged his fully charged sword into the monster, causing a massive explosion in the area. As the golem lay incapacitated on the ground, Frey stood with his sword embedded in its chest, and his mask shattered as he collapsed from exhaustion. With blood pouring from his mouth, he wondered if the golem was truly defeated. But then he spotted a scout crow and realized the villagers might come to investigate all the noise they had made during the battle. He knew Irina would discover his true identity if the villagers found him there, and he tried to prevent that by escaping, but his body could no longer move. As he fell to the ground, he saw an imposing mage standing over him with dark magic swirling around them. Looking closely, he saw the mysterious mage was Kanya, who told him to leave everything to her. While helping him up, she informed him that a carriage was waiting nearby and promised to take him to the dorm without drawing attention. So he comfortably passed out in her arms. At the dorm, Kanya desperately checked on his condition as he slept. When he woke up, she informed him that he had been unconscious for 2 whole days. He told her he was fine, just a bit exhausted, and asked her to catch him up on the current situation. She then revealed that the investigation bureau had looked into the cause of his sudden disappearance in the forest, and it turned out Ariani had used a teleportation scroll to save Irina. Frey was surprised by this, but she pointed out that it was very strange for them to be teleported since it was supposed to be a recovery scroll. When he asked if it was an accident, she said investigators believed it was highly likely, and it would only be treated as an accident if they could verify Ariani's statement. Hearing this, Frey wondered how such a coincidence could happen, and realized the shop might have sold her a fake scroll. He instructed Kanya to investigate where the scroll came from, but she informed him that someone else was already handling the case. When he asked about Irina's whereabouts, she revealed that Irina had just returned to the academy after being found in a nearby village. This relieved him, as his entire goal had been to ensure her safe escape. And when he asked about his match with her, Kanya revealed that he had been declared the winner the day before. He felt dissatisfied, knowing that losing would have made things easier. But he was ultimately glad he hadn't been penalized by the system. However, the quest to fight and defeat Irina was still on his pop-up screen, so he decided to figure out a way to accomplish it once he recovered. He thanked Kanya for the information, but she interrupted him by revealing that it was the Duke who had made it easy for them to find his location. This surprised him, as he knew his father was traveling with Arya. So she explained that his father had immediately gone to the magic tower upon hearing about the incident to inquire about the scroll's destination. He had gotten his answer, but on his way back he collapsed from stress and hadn't woken up since. Hearing this, Frey was so dizzy that he asked Kanya to let him lean on her for a moment. She agreed, holding him tightly as he cried in her arms. A few days later on the weekend, Kanya advised Frey to rest a bit before heading home, but Frey replied that he couldn't just lie there while his father was bedridden. After putting on his coat, he informed her that he wouldn't stay long and that he also needed to prepare for his main quest. She then informed him that Irina was waiting outside his room, so he asked Kanya to let her in. When Irina entered, he started acting like an oppressive scumbag, asking if she had truly been saved by Rihanna. Despite her disgust for his attitude, she knelt down and begged him to release Ariani, promising to submit to him. Frey maintained his composure, though he was surprised she had come to negotiate with him directly instead of seeking revenge for the incident in the forest. After ordering Kanya to prepare the carriage, he arrogantly told her he had no obligation to listen to her, since she was his slave. In desperation, she promised to do whatever he said, so he tasked her with finishing what he couldn't do in the forest. Despite the humiliation on her face, she accepted his demand. But he said he had no interest in obedient people as he walked away, earning 300 points for his despicable acts. He then ordered her to go wash up, declaring he would only help her if she did a good job of it. And she agreed. Outside, Kanya asked what his request was, but he told her to forget about it and promised to tell her the whole story on their way. As their carriage moved forward, Frey told Kanya that Irina had begged for Ariani's release, and he had decided to free her upon his return because Irina hadn't exploited the countless ways she could have begged or bribed him. He then brought up Kanya using dark magic in the forest and asked how she felt. She reassured him she was fine, as the magic she used didn't drain her life force. He told her she was his only pillar of support right now, and thanks to her, he could still smile in this terrible world. But this incident made him realize he couldn't keep going on like this. So he decided to rely on her strength more seriously from then on, and she agreed to assist him as her life belonged to him. He said he wanted her to take care of herself so she could act if something like him losing consciousness or getting teleported happened again. Then, he pulled a special artifact from his system inventory and told her this item, along with her younger sister, would definitely be a huge help. At the Starlight family mansion, Frey's father, Abraham, lay unconscious in bed when Frey arrived, holding his hand and promising to return once everything was over. As he sat quietly beside his father, he heard a knock and Kanya entered, asking if he was sure about his decision. Hearing this, Frey explained there was no need to stay longer, as he was just a useless son who brought shame to his parents. And if he stayed any longer, it might cause misunderstandings. Then, he mentioned the doctors had confirmed his father's life wasn't in danger, believing things would return to normal if they handled everything properly. When he suggested going to his sister's room, Kanya agreed. And when he asked how she was doing, she informed him she had used magic to help the girl sleep. She then warned him that his sister might be upset to see him, but Frey didn't mind and told her to wait in his room, since his conversation with his sister wouldn't take long. When he entered the room, he saw Kanya's younger sister sleeping peacefully, and his first thought was how much she looked exactly like Kanya, despite their innate abilities being complete opposites. Holding the special item, the system informed him it was called a potential potion, as it could draw out the drinker's hidden potential. Unlike Kanya, who sacrificed her life force to use dark magic, her sister, Katya's ability specialized in controlling and suppressing dark magic. And since she could control others' dark magic, Frey felt the potential potion would be very useful to her. As he fed her the potion, he thought about how only a fraction of her abilities were awakened due to her young age, and the potion would now allow her to unleash her full potential. After giving her the potion, he smiled, knowing its effects would kick in within half a day. Just then, his sister Arya fired a blast of magic at him, demanding to know what he had done to Katya, but he just smiled nonchalantly while dodging her attacks. As he sat in the corner, she rushed over to check on Katya and asked what he had fed her, assuming it was an aphrodisiac. She then blamed him for their father's collapse. This made him feel terrible, as she was confronting him instead of greeting him affectionately. He then asked what was wrong with using what belonged to him. She angrily told him Katya wasn't an object. However, he stooped even lower, reminding her that since their father was in a coma, he was the head of the family, and he could do whatever he wanted. He could do whatever he pleased, because everything in the mansion belonged to him. He then told her to leave so he could continue enjoying himself. But she started begging him to stop, tears welling in her eyes. Gently punching his chest, she pleaded with him to go back to being the kind brother he used to be. But he pushed her away, complaining she was ruining the mood. He then told her he would stop for today because her crying annoyed him and warned her to stay out of his sight as much as possible. After he left the room, earning an additional 300 villain points, Arya cried, wondering what had happened to her brother who used to be the kindest person. Meanwhile, he sat outside the door, regretfully wondering how things had come to this. Lying in bed, he realized confronting his family took a massive emotional toll on him, even though he had been playing this fake villain role for a while. But he resolved not to get sentimental, because anyone who cared for him would be penalized in future events. Right then, Kanya arrived and informed him that the process they went through had a tremendous effect. Summoning an orb of dark magic in her hand, she explained that after the treatment, she could now control her dark magic and perform large-scale tasks like creating clones. She demonstrated this by creating a clone of Frey, which delighted him as he could use it to conceal his identity effortlessly. He instructed her to infiltrate the subconscious minds of the dorm residents and send a few clones to monitor them. After she left to carry out the mission, Frey felt relieved, as he could now safely focus on his main quest. And since he had the upper hand over Irina and the other two girls who hated him, he felt the quest would go smoothly as long as no major incidents occurred. Then he remembered something odd. Serena still hadn't returned from her trip. Meanwhile, somewhere on the western continent, Serena was exploring a forest with her companion. The girl remarked that the paper in Serena's hand looked like the scribbles she had seen in the ruins. When the girl asked why Serena suddenly decided to visit the ruins of the hero from 1,000 years ago, Serena said she decided to take a shortcut because she was running out of time. On the page, the writer stated that being chosen as a hero was already more than enough, but they imagined their descendants facing an even crueler fate. They then assumed Frey was currently carrying out his first main quest, which Serena found intriguing. Reading the page, she wondered what kind of expression Frey would make when he found out everything and returned home. Outside the mansion, Frey stepped into a waiting carriage. From inside the mansion, Arya watched him through the window with a distressed expression. But a moment later, she sadly closed the curtains. As the carriage began to move, Kanya asked Frey if it was okay to leave without seeing Arya, but he calmly replied that seeing her would only bring sorrow. Kanya stayed silent, looking at him with concern as their journey began. Not long after, Kanya asked about the details of the first main quest so she could properly assist him. Frey immediately saw the benefit of sharing the information in case of an emergency. He then revealed that the first main quest was to catch the culprit behind the attack on the commoner dormitories. Frey noted he would have become the culprit if he had lost his battle with Irina, while looking at the system window that displayed more details about the quest. But the system also revealed that skipping the quest wouldn't affect the scenario's progression or incur a penalty. Frey recalled how he had easily completed the quest in his previous life by causing the incident and turning himself in. While reflecting on how he used questionable means and bribery to get away with it, Frey realized the plan had failed and he never found out who the real culprit was. Kanya then suggested he orchestrate the incident himself, but he told her about the possibility of another attacker showing up if he took that route. Kanya acknowledged the system's cunning, and Frey suggested they search for demons lurking around the commoner dormitories. Surprised, Kanya asked why they were looking for demons instead of nobles, and Frey explained how demons could have exploited the opportunity to infiltrate the empire. He described the deep-rooted corruption of the empire and how the arrogance of the nobles had sown seeds of resentment among the commoners. From his explanation, Kanya realized the demons could use this tension to cause instability and ultimately seize control of the empire. Furthermore, Frey warned that if he failed the quest, the Demon King's forces would make their move, and Kanya immediately suggested finding a way to identify demons disguised as humans. However, Frey assured her it would be a piece of cake if they bought a certain item. Later, in the dark alleys of the empire, Frey bought a few things and declared they were ready. Kanya held up the demon detector he had bought, asking if it actually worked, and Frey told her about the device's limitations. Apparently, it could detect demons below the rank of the Demon King and his commanders. Frey told her the system window would recognize higher-ranking demons, and Kanya felt relieved that the system was unexpectedly helpful this time, a sentiment Frey shared. Then, Frey asked if she had started investigating Serena, and Kanya reported that she had asked an informant in the alleys and also intended to deploy her shadow clones. Kanya admitted she might not be able to find Serena if she was truly in hiding, and Frey agreed, pointing out that Serena was the heir to the family that handled all of the Empire's intelligence and assassination missions. As they continued discussing strategy, Frey noticed a group of homeless children nearby. He immediately recognized them as the children who had been captured by the succubus queen. The starving children lamented that they had spent all the gold coins they received from a masked man, since the adults would have taken it from them anyway. Seeing their plight, Frey realized his mistake and decided to build an orphanage, since he had more than enough money. But Kanya rejected the idea, as it would blow his cover. However, Frey showed her the lifespan measuring device he received after defeating Arena, revealing that he only had about 4 to 5 years left to live. He hoped to atone for his mistakes by saving people like those homeless children, and his words moved Kanya. Flustered but touched, she accepted his proposal, on the condition that they do it under her name. Shortly after, Kanya distributed bread to the starving children, while Frey hoped the world would find a little peace. Afterward, he remembered he had to attend the Imperial Palace ball as his father's representative and resolved to drive away anyone who approached him, since he was already engaged. Meanwhile, in Glanna's room at the Imperial Palace, the Empress declared that an alliance between the Moonlight family and the hero would pose a threat to the Imperial Palace. But Glanna realized she was targeting the Starlight family's massive fortune. Before leaving, the Empress told Glanna she had to marry Frey at all costs, threatening to sell her off if she failed. Trembling in despair, Glanna cried, preferring to end her own life rather than marry Frey. Back at the academy, Frey received an official letter from the Emperor demanding he cancel his current engagement and get engaged to Glanna. Petrified, Frey saw that this order was justified by the second vow, established by the first emperor and the previous hero 1,000 years ago. Kanya wondered why this was happening so suddenly, and Frey remembered reading about this second vow in a prophecy. Then, before he could think further, 3 female students rushed toward him, each boldly offering to be his partner for the upcoming imperial ball. Watching the commotion, Frey quickly realized that rumors of his engagement being canceled had begun to spread, and someone was clearly manipulating these half-baked rumors. Fortunately, Kanya interrupted the girls and showed them the order from the Emperor. Seeing this, the girls stormed off in anger because their plans were ruined, but they didn't intend to give up so easily. Frey guessed the rumors would cause trouble, but Kanya believed the engagement to Glanna was the main issue. However, Frey was optimistic about the situation, as he had also been thinking of ways to keep his distance when Serena returned. Kanya acknowledged the difficulty of avoiding his fiancée, and Frey decided to use this opportunity to create some distance. Meanwhile, in the academy library, Glanna skimmed through a book, but it lacked the useful information she needed. After returning the book, she decided to check the Imperial Palace's secret archives. However, she couldn't access them without her father's permission, and she wondered how to investigate the second vow. Glanna recalled the founding of the empire 1,000 years ago, when her ancestors created the nation with immense help from 2 powerful families. The Starlight family defeated the Demon King and helped gain public support, while the Moonlight family handled shady dealings behind the scenes. The Emperor granted them extraordinary privileges and never interfered with their decisions. Glanna then wondered why the current emperor ordered the cancellation of the engagement and began speculating about the true meaning of the vow. Her train of thought was interrupted when Frey suddenly appeared and asked what she was thinking so seriously about. Startled, Glanna glared at him, suspecting he had only come to toy with her. Unable to keep up the charade, Glanna excused herself to leave, but Frey regained her attention by mentioning the rumored love triangle among their ancestors 1,000 years ago. Glanna asked if he knew about the second vow, and he talked about the first emperor falling in love with the first hero, as recorded in an old manuscript. According to the document, the first emperor made the vow after losing his first consort, hoping his descendants wouldn't suffer the same fate. However, Glanna called it ridiculous. But Frey tossed her a folded piece of paper, revealing that other information wasn't encrypted. He then turned to leave, casually remarking that he looked forward to seeing her at the ball. Glanna asked for his thoughts on the forced marriage, but he gave a political answer, saying his decision didn't matter, immediately downplaying the power he would gain as the head of the Moonlight family. Nevertheless, Frey promised to give Glanna some freedom if she behaved, but she remained silent. Leaving her in her depression, Frey hoped she would take the hint and avoid the marriage, since the invitation didn't mention the involved party's right to refuse. Elsewhere, deep in a forest at night, an old woman approached a small house. Inside, Serena greeted her, but the old woman, who happened to be the master of the Rising Sun Empire's magic tower, commented on the silly nickname Serena used for her. Soon after, she cut the small talk and got straight to the point. To the old woman's surprise, Serena wanted to erase her memories. She asked for more details, and Serena revealed she wanted to erase everything from the past month. Shocked, the woman asked what her goal was since her body wouldn't be able to handle that much. Despite the risks, Serena insisted because she felt she was on the verge of revealing the hero's true identity, but the woman had no idea what she was talking about. Furthermore, Serena asked her to cast a spell that would force her to obey unconditionally, with Frey as the target of that obedience. While handing over a letter, Serena explained she had to do this so she wouldn't end up killing him at the Imperial Ball. At the Imperial Palace, Glanna stood before a mirror to admire her dress, and a maid complimented her elegant appearance before excusing herself. After she left, Glanna sighed heavily, noting there were still 6 hours before the ball started. While thinking of a way to decode it, she suddenly heard a faint meow and immediately looked around the room. Soon after, she spotted a cat leaving her room and wondered where it came from. Right then, she noticed the book it had left behind and quickly picked it up. She opened it, and the contents of the book left her shocked. Later that day, a messenger announced Frey's arrival as he entered the ballroom with Kanya. Frey held a glass of wine and asked if the item had been delivered. Kanya confirmed it had been delivered to Glanna, and Frey began celebrating his impending freedom from the arranged marriage. Kanya reminded him that it wasn't over yet, but Frey insisted it was a sure thing, as he had given Glanna enough hints and was resolved to reject it himself if necessary. Kanya then pointed out that her agreement with the Empress was the only thing left to settle, but Frey didn't consider it a difficult task. Suddenly, a blonde girl with intricately curled hair confidently approached Frey and demanded his attention. However, Frey quickly recognized her as the one who used to bully Irina and immediately asked what she wanted. She sympathized with him, saying he was about to marry the most extravagant princess. She listed the disadvantages of marrying Glanna, and Frey even warned her about how she spoke of the princess. She introduced herself as a count's daughter and told him about all the wonderful things she could offer if he married her. After her pitch, she elegantly excused herself and walked away. But Kanya was surprised that weirdos like that noble girl existed. Frey assumed it was just desperation, and Kanya realized why, since the girl knew her words wouldn't change a royal decree. Soon after, Frey told Kanya it was time for his appointment, and she hoped everything would go smoothly. Frey walked past Glanna, and they ignored each other. But Glanna kept watching him as he left. A moment later, a butler led Frey into a feminine room and announced that she was on her way. Frey asked about the room's designer, and it turned out to be the Empress. As he was commenting on the Empress's bizarre taste, she arrived and apologized for keeping him waiting. She then asked how he felt about joining the royal family, assuming nothing was standing in his way. Frey disagreed and asked about the potential backlash from the Moonlight family. From her cunning reply, Frey realized she had resolved the issue with money, the only thing that swayed the Moonlight family. Unlike their righteousness 1,000 years ago, Frey guessed the arranged marriage with the Moonlight family's daughter was for financial gain and told the Empress his thoughts on this absurd arrangement. But she babbled on about the royal family and its eccentricities. Without arguing further, Frey handed her an official contract regarding a massive donation in exchange for royal status. The Empress skimmed through it and noticed the 6 million gold reward, and Frey asked her to sign if there were no issues. The Empress agreed, but noticed a clause preventing his arrest for any crime other than treason. Frey spoke of his intent to do dirty work for the royal family once he was married, hoping the Empress would ensure his protection. Impressed, the Empress believed his words but still asked about another puzzling clause that nullified the donation if the engagement was cancelled. Frey said it was just a precaution, and she accepted it while laughing maniacally. Confident that Glanna wouldn't betray them, the Empress agreed to the deal. Right after, Frey turned to leave, and the Empress declared she would handle the rest of the matters regarding the agreement. After leaving the room, Frey thought about how greed ruins a nation, but also celebrated his successful act. Just then, Glanna approached him out of nowhere and coldly assumed he had finalized the transaction involving her. However, Frey wondered why she was there and lied about the contents of his meeting with the Empress. Yet Glanna didn't believe him and demanded he wake up from his delusions, which solely involved satisfying his selfish needs. She declared things wouldn't go his way and walked past him, but clearly Frey had found a way to avoid the marriage. After Glanna left, Frey revealed that everything was going according to plan and decided to enjoy her fury from a prime spot. Later that evening, while the other nobles danced gracefully on the dance floor, Frey checked the authenticity of the Emperor's seal on the contract he had finalized with the Empress, concluding that no one would doubt him with that in his hands. Beside him, Kanya observed the gathering crowd before noticing Serena's absence, and Frey confirmed she hadn't shown up yet. He concluded that the Moonlight family must have declined to attend the ball. Deep in thought, Kanya agreed with his deduction, assuming the head of the Moonlight family rarely appeared at such events. And with the engagement cancelled, it was no surprise Serena would have no interest in attending. Frey admitted that was true, but he had expected her to come under the guise of gathering information to kill him. Kanya wondered if Serena truly intended to finish him off, remarking that there was absolutely no movement from her side. Frey agreed, and wondered why it seemed like she was observing him rather than hunting him down like the others. However, Kanya suggested they should remain vigilant. Right then, the herald announced the Emperor's arrival. Emperor Lycan entered the ballroom with Empress Raimi and immediately announced Glanna and Frey's engagement. Unenthusiastically, Emperor Lycan spoke of how this marriage aligned with the first Empress's vow and left the rest to Raimi. Taking control of the stage, Raimi invited the involved parties to step forward. Instantly, Frey and Glanna became the center of attention, and Raimi asked for Frey's consent to the engagement. Without hesitation, Frey dramatically dropped to one knee, publicly proposing to Glanna. Wasting no time, Raimi asked for Glanna's consent. But to everyone's surprise, Glanna rejected the engagement, and Raimi's composure faltered. Standing up, Glanna revealed the hidden clause in the second vow, stating that the marriage couldn't be formalized without the consent of both parties. Glanna turned to her father for confirmation, but he looked utterly bewildered. In an interesting turn of events, Emperor Lycan declared he thought both parties had agreed to the engagement before the ball. Glanna explained she hadn't known about the right of refusal, and Emperor Lycan immediately realized Raimi had manipulated the situation. Unable to overturn the first Empress's vow, Emperor Lycan declared the marriage invalid due to the lack of mutual consent. He then turned to Frey, asking if he was willing to compromise. Frey put on another act, appearing reluctant but maintaining his composure. After a moment, he gracefully accepted the outcome. Emperor Lycan thanked him for his understanding and apologized to the guests for the unfortunate interruption before encouraging everyone to enjoy the party. Not long after, Raimi quickly confronted Glanna and reminded her of the plan to sell her off if the marriage failed. However, Glanna stood her ground and threatened to expose Raimi's corruption if she dared to go through with it. Before the argument could escalate, Frey approached and calmly informed Raimi that he would be taking back his 6 million gold donation. Raimi tried to persuade him, but Frey revealed he also intended to keep the immunity clause stated in their contract. At that moment, Raimi realized she had been completely played and swore to take revenge on him. But Frey ignored her words as he walked away. While thinking about the unexpected rewards of this trouble, he realized he had finally escaped the burden of a fiancée. Coincidentally, he bumped into the Count's daughter from earlier, Isabel, and she subtly tried to reintroduce herself as a suitable partner. Unfortunately for her, Frey bluntly told her to get lost. Unable to accept the rejection, she confronted him and they bickered back and forth, but he paid no mind to the exchange and simply walked away. A moment later, Frey reunited with Kanya and apologized for keeping her waiting. However, her distressed expression immediately caught his attention, and she handed him a letter. While he wondered what could have unsettled her, she informed him that Serena had left the letter and a message for him not long ago. Then, Frey opened the letter, and to his surprise, Serena demanded he meet her in the courtyard, threatening to kill him if he refused. Elsewhere, in the Demon King's hidden domain, she gave a demon a special pendant designed to conceal its true identity. Excited, she stared at the system window, waiting to see how the hero would overcome his first main quest. On the other hand, Frey arrived at the courtyard and met Serena after reading the threatening letter. She greeted him casually, but he asked what she wanted, reminding her they were no longer engaged. He panicked as she approached him, but Serena explained why she had resorted to a threat, knowing full well he wouldn't have shown up without it. Now that they were strangers, Serena decided to help him. However, she stated she didn't remember the reason because she had lost her memories. He wondered what she was implying, and after toying with him for a moment, she revealed she had erased her memories of the past month using magic. Frey then asked who the culprit was, and Serena told him she had asked the master of the magic tower to do it for her. She also briefly told him about the spell of absolute submission that now bound her to him. Shocked, he asked why she did that, and she assumed it was to help him. She also deduced that the memories she erased were related to him, stating she couldn't remember what she saw at the ruins. Clearly perturbed, Frey wondered if she could read the records in the ruins. Apparently there were ruins tied to the hero all over the world, containing records of his identity and penalties. Since they were written in Kana, Frey thought no one would be able to read them. He wondered if she had deciphered it and concluded she erased her memories to prevent him from suffering a penalty. With that, Frey acknowledged Serena's brilliance. She also told him about her efforts to avoid recalling it so she wouldn't cause him trouble. After understanding the situation, Frey asked about her reason for helping him, and she bluntly declared her love for him. The declaration left Frey speechless, and Serena excused herself to leave. As she walked away, she told him to call her if he needed help, and Frey realized he had been completely outplayed. After that, he decided to play along and utilize Serena's abilities as well as her family's resources, which were now at his disposal, along with the legal immunity he gained from the contract. He resolved to combine them perfectly and complete the first quest without any issues. Elsewhere, the master of the magic tower walked through the alleys, grumbling about her disciple making her run errands. Just then, a child named Glay timidly approached and offered her bread, but the old hag arrogantly ordered her to get lost. The tower master then revealed she was there to investigate a massive amount of mana she had sensed in that area. She tossed Gel a gold coin, and the girl happily thanked the old woman. Before the tower master left, Gilly mentioned she could use magic, but the tower master didn't believe her, as she couldn't sense a shred of magic from her. However, Gilly unleashed her mana, and the tower master stood dumbfounded in disbelief, wondering how a child possessed such colossal magical power. Without hesitation, the tower master teleported them to a forest, scaring Glee to death. After learning Glee's name, the tower master declared she was now her disciple. Meanwhile, back at the Demon King's palace, she complained about being stuck in her hideout due to a penalty. Right then, a demon crow arrived, and the Demon King revealed she wanted to make her move. She revealed her plan to exploit the chaos accompanying an attack on the commoner dormitories to infiltrate the Empire with her army. The Demon Crow decided to search for a suitable attacker, and the Demon King suggested using a human overflowing with strong negative emotions, as dark magic worked more effectively on them. The Demon Crow accepted the order, and the Demon King gave it an item to take along. At the academy, Kanya met Frey in his room and asked what he was doing. He revealed he was planning and suggested gathering their strength before the upcoming event. Kanya quickly understood he was preparing for the day of the attack and its aftermath, but Frey didn't care about the aftermath since he had legal immunity. However, he planned to spread false rumors, earn points, and completely focus on finding the real culprit. While trying to remain optimistic, Kanya wondered what would happen if they couldn't catch the culprit. And Frey insisted that was impossible, as the demon detector was a special item that bypassed disguises and other magical effects. He then revealed that only the system could counter its ability, but he was the only hero who possessed it. After brushing off Kanya's worries, Serena suddenly barged into his room, and Kanya immediately confronted her for entering without permission. Serena claimed she didn't need it to enter her fiancé's room, but Frey quickly reminded her of their cancelled engagement. Ignoring his words, Serena looked around the room and concluded there was nothing suspicious. Annoyed, Frey wondered why she came when he didn't call, but Serena wanted to know why Kanya was there. Kanya replied that she was Frey's butler. Serena narrowed her eyes and asked if she wanted to harm him. No, but from her slightly flustered response and body language, Serena confirmed she genuinely served Frey. Frey thanked Serena for the reassurance and revealed he needed her help. Before that, he ordered her not to be certain of anything regarding him, and due to the submission spell, Serena reluctantly accepted the order. With that, Frey hoped it would prevent any penalties from triggering. While recalling the system window displaying his fake villain title path, he noted that penalties were triggered based on absolute certainty, like when Kanya found out. He then handed Serena a map of the area around the commoner dormitories and a demon detector. He explained the device's function and informed her of the demon's intent to attack that area. He then ordered her to deploy her family's personnel for surveillance and protection, and Serena agreed. She asked why he was doing good deeds now, but Frey insisted it was an order and told her not to pry any further. The submission spell activated again, and Serena immediately accepted everything he said. After that, she excused herself to leave and once again confessed her love for him before going. The bizarre confession left Frey speechless, and Kanya commented on Serena's unpredictability. Frey agreed but acknowledged her skills and decided to patiently wait for her report. Elsewhere, the Moonlight family's surveillance personnel set out, and Serena received word that they were in position. She checked the demon detector, which had no reaction yet, but her assistant mentioned they had also deployed demon experts. Serena counted on them, and the assistant quickly left to take his position. Then Serena decided to inspect the designated locations on the map Frey had given her. Meanwhile, the demon crow watched Serena as she strategized and concluded she wasn't the intended culprit because it couldn't sense negative emotions from her. It recalled the Demon King's order to find someone capable of wielding powerful dark magic to break her chains. Right then, it noticed Isabel, who was still upset over Frey's rejection, and immediately seized control of her mind. It then ordered her to attack the commoner dormitories, and she complied without resistance. The next morning, Kanya brought coffee to Frey's room. As he took a sip, he commented on how peaceful the morning was compared to recent days. Kanya agreed, pointing out there had been too many incidents lately. Speaking of which, Frey casually invited her to go clothes shopping and have a meal together as a way to make up for the hardships he had caused her. Hearing this, Kanya grew flustered and wondered if it was a date. Before Frey could elaborate on the outing, Serena rushed in and informed him of suspicious magical energy leaking from the commoner dormitories while trying to catch her breath. Shocked, Frey immediately suggested postponing their outing. Kanya agreed without complaining, and the three of them headed toward the dormitories. When they arrived at the area brimming with sinister mana, the quest regarding the commoner dormitory attack incident popped up again. The system window showed Frey the objective, which was to stop the attack and apprehend the culprit. Additionally, the reward was the awakening of the hero's weapon and leveling up, while the penalty for failure was a slight reduction in his life force and lifespan. Frey commented on the overwhelming mana, and Serena assumed that was why she had withdrawn her forces earlier. He then asked for more details, and Serena explained that the surveillance and detection equipment hadn't picked up anything. However, that morning, evil mana suddenly began pouring out from inside the dormitories. Along with that, Frey wondered if any noble students had entered the dorm, and Serena asked why he brought that up. Deep in thought, Frey blamed this terrible situation on his carelessness for not informing Serena that the culprit could be a noble. He then wondered why the detector hadn't worked, but decided to prioritize the situation and think about it later. Next, Kanya suggested investigating before taking action, but Frey insisted there was no time for that. He decided to charge in and apprehend the culprit. He took out the domination stone and showed it to her. Kanya confirmed the stone was genuine, and Frey explained he brought it along as extra insurance. The system window displayed information about the stone, and Frey decided to capture the culprit for his questionable plan. Just as he was about to enter, he suddenly grabbed Kanya and Serena and hid in the nearby bushes, just in time to avoid the sudden appearance of Irina, Glana, and Firoz. While hiding in the bushes, Serena asked for a reason, but he signaled her to be quiet. As the other girls approached the dormitory, Firoz confirmed the presence of evil there, and Irina said she had noticed it while visiting Arya. Irina asked for their help to save the people inside, and they both agreed to assist. Sneaking a peek at them, Frey wasn't surprised Irina was there since she lived in the dorm, but he wondered why the other two were with her. He guessed the three girls had formed a bond without him knowing, and realized things were becoming unpredictable. Shortly after, Serena demanded an explanation since she didn't know what to do, and Frey immediately ordered Kanya to set up a perception-blocking spell to keep people away. Annoyed, Serena quickly cast the spell and declared she could do it too. She then asked about his intentions, and he immediately thought about his plan. Presumably, Frey hoped to find the attacker and use the domination stone to take over their mind. After that, he would reveal himself as the mastermind and complete the quest. He thought more about the uproar it would cause, but counted on his legal immunity and enough money to easily cover it up. Instead of explaining to Serena, he ordered her to assist him without overthinking while he searched for the source of the magic. Serena complied and the trio set off. As soon as they entered the eerie hallway, Frey heard Kanya's sudden warning and immediately noticed a monster lunging toward him. Unable to react in time, Serena leaped into action and blocked the monster's attack. Then, she counterattacked and sent it flying into the wall. More monsters appeared, but Serena easily overpowered them with her magic, crushing them effortlessly. While witnessing this one-sided slaughter, Frey acknowledged Serena's impressive abilities and felt grateful she was on his side. He noticed a hexagram drawn on the floor with a dark aura lingering around it. Serena wondered what the ominous aura was, but Kanya suddenly called Frey back. She led him to another room where they found the dorm manager and a maid lying unconscious. Kanya checked on them and deduced they had been put to sleep by magic. Frey asked her to try infiltrating their subconscious minds to gather information. Kanya tried, but something blocked her, and she told Frey about it. Surprised, Frey wondered how that was possible, since Kanya surpassed everyone in subconscious magic, and blocking it entirely was impossible no matter how strong a person's willpower was. He noted that not even the master of the magic tower, Firoz, or anyone in the Demon King's army could do that. After a moment of deep thought, a disturbing possibility crossed his mind, and he began wondering if the Demon King was involved. After Frey bluntly suggested the Demon King might be involved, Kanya panicked, but he quickly clarified his point. He suspected that high-ranking officers were borrowing the Demon King's power. He wondered if the Demon King would stoop so low as to involve herself in an attack on a commoner dorm. After thinking for a moment, he decided not to overthink it and address the problem at hand. Right then, Serena ran over, panting, and reported to Frey about her reconnaissance mission. She noticed that although monsters roamed the dorms, there had been no casualties so far. From that detail alone, she concluded the attacker was controlling them. She also mentioned the hexagram they had seen earlier and confirmed it was drawn on all 3 floors of the building. From that observation, she deduced that the entire dorm was inside a magic circle, and this shocking news left Frey speechless. He immediately recalled the sacrificial magic circle using living humans, which he had read about in the prophecy book. However, Frey noted he had completely forgotten the vague details, but still recognized the drawing as a subpart of the sacrificial magic circle. Thinking back to the incident involving the succubus queen, Frey guessed there was a separate activation circle, and after a moment of calculation, he concluded it was on the rooftop along with the culprit. Wasting no time, he resolved to catch the culprit and break the magic circle so the people in the dorm wouldn't be sacrificed. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, Isabel stood in the center of the magic circle and continued releasing sinister mana. The crow recognized her as the best host due to her efficiency. Since the strength of the host's negative emotions affected the completion speed, the crow estimated it would be done in an hour. However, Frey arrived and immediately understood why Isabel was the perfect prey for them, as she hated him. While rambling about it, he unleashed a magical slash at the pair, but the opponent was unfazed. He noted that wouldn't be enough, and the crow declared it wouldn't be easy for him. Once the crow realized Frey had seen through its disguise, it stopped pretending and forced Isabel to repel the intruder. Just as she moved to counterattack, Serena arrived and blocked her. Along with Kanya, they decided to handle Isabel while Frey faced the crow. After dividing their roles, Frey approached the crow, hoping it wasn't alone. Feeling disadvantaged in a head-on fight, the crow chose another strategy and tried to seize control of Frey's mind. However, Frey had been waiting for this. He immediately took out the domination stone and declared the outcome was decided. The crow recognized the artifact, but before it could resist, it lost consciousness. It fell lifelessly to the ground, and at the same time, Isabel collapsed, proving the brainwashing would wear off once the controller lost consciousness. Kanya and Serena breathed a sigh of relief, grateful the confrontation had ended quickly. They also commented on the terrifying raw power behind their opponent's simple attacks. However, before Frey could begin dismantling the magic circle, Irina, Glana, and Firoz suddenly arrived on the rooftop. They immediately questioned what he was doing there. Glana assumed he was the culprit, and the other girls agreed with her. Shocked, Frey realized everything had gone too smoothly and wondered why they had shown up at such a crucial moment. Glana also demanded Kanya and Serena explain their presence. Caught off guard, Kanya couldn't openly defend Frey without revealing too much. To avoid suspicion, she abruptly changed her stance and sided with the other girls. Serena tried to portray Frey as a good person, but she suspiciously forgot why he was there. Frey saw that overthinking was straining the girls' bodies, and he decided to change the situation before they started asking weird questions. He looked at the quest details on the system window and concluded he would still complete the quest if he escaped and later turned himself in. But he was more worried about the sacrificial magic circle. After assessing the situation, Frey concluded he was the only one capable of disabling the circle safely, as a small mistake later could turn into a massive disaster. Unable to reuse the domination stone, as it could only be used once a day, he chose to activate its berserk mode ability. The moment he activated it, an eerie aura spread throughout the entire dorm. The girls around him immediately sensed something was wrong and questioned his actions. Irina suddenly realized what was happening and declared that Frey was summoning monsters toward them. At that moment, the crow perched on Frey's head while he thought about the forced berserk mode, which temporarily confused creatures lacking self-awareness. A horde of monsters gathered, and Frey intentionally acted as if he was being controlled by the crow. He planned to secretly dismantle the magic circle while the girls were distracted by the monsters. While pretending to be controlled, Frey lifted his head and coldly ordered the girls to become sacrifices for the Demon King. Glana assumed he had finally revealed his true nature, but Kanya quickly suggested he didn't seem like his usual cunning and sinister self. Inwardly, Frey appreciated Kanya's help and kept up the act. Suddenly, the crow on Frey's head declared he was completely under its control, and Kanya immediately supported that claim, stating he was possessed. Firoz also recognized the overwhelming evil presence, and Glana, still cautious, suggested they uncover the truth after subduing him first. Frey silently appreciated how things were unfolding and decided to discreetly break the circle while keeping the girls busy. Soon after, the monsters overwhelmed them with their numbers, and Glana suggested attacking Frey head-on. Kanya quickly dismissed the idea because of the unpredictable magic circle. Glana then suggested they break the magic circle, but Irina rejected the proposal, as carelessly trying to break it could cause bigger problems. Out of options, Glana decided to join Firoz in restraining Frey while the others handled the monsters. The two lunged at Frey, who deflected Glana's magical shots, blocked Firoz's punch and sent her sliding backward. Frey confirmed they hadn't touched the magic circle, as it could explode if mishandled. However, even though he was the only one who knew how to break the circle, he still needed them to attack from a distance. Out of nowhere, Frey blocked a sudden magical attack and realized it had the perfect angle and force to help him subtly break the circle. Seeing it was Serena, he noticed it wasn't as strong as her usual attacks. Unaware of the details, Serena whispered her intention to play along, and he realized she knew he was still conscious. He acknowledged her sharp mind and decided to keep acting, since she made things easier for him. Frey continued blocking the relentless magical attacks and thought about the only way to erase the magic circle without any side effects. Apparently, he had to mix opposing magical properties with the demon's attributes to neutralize them before the spell activated. After a while, he achieved his goal and noticed the circle would disappear on its own after being activated. With that, Frey provoked the girls using the crow, and after taking down most of the monsters, Serena joined them in attacking Frey. Meanwhile, Irina watched the whole thing from behind, looking worried and uncertain. A moment later, Frey vomited blood and dropped to one knee while the crow fell to the ground, seemingly unable to move. Glana and Firoz moved closer. Firaz suggested they remain cautious, but Glanna was proud of her close combat skills and claimed she was faster. As she charged a magical shot to finish him off, Frey thought about the spell he was about to use, which would leave him bedridden for days. He decided to trust Kanya to handle the rest, and immediately mocked Glanna's claim that she was faster than him. To her surprise, Frey activated the magic circle and declared they would all become sacrifices for the Demon King. Kanya tried to persuade him to stop, but he continued anyway. After the magic circle failed to activate, the girls found themselves unharmed and wondered what had happened. After some deliberation, Serena examined the scene and concluded the spell had failed after losing control. Kanya silently appreciated Frey's efforts and decided to handle the rest. She rushed to check on him and informed the others that he had fainted after the failure. She then suggested they arrest him before he woke up. After the failure, Firaz and Glanna admitted they thought it was the end for them, but still wondered why it failed, listing out possible reasons. Visibly confused, Irina watched everything unfold while Kanya planned to take Frey to the infirmary. Then Serena hugged him tightly and begged him to wake up. However, the girls suddenly felt a chilling sensation run down their spines, and Kanya wondered who had noticed. During the battle against the supposedly possessed Frey, Irina's thoughts drifted back to her first encounter with Rihanna in the Grey Forest. She recalled the masked boy's hurried tone and how he never showed his face due to an illness. Surprisingly, he also knew about the ice dragon fruit, which only she and Frey knew about. At the time, she briefly considered Rihanna might be Frey, but dismissed the thought because, unlike Rihanna, Frey would never help her. However, the more she observed Frey's movements, the more he reminded her of Rihanna. While the others focused on subduing Frey, Irina noticed the glowing streams of mana continuously weakening the magic circle. The moment Frey activated the magic circle, a blinding light burst forth, and after it faded, she saw he was unconscious while the girls were perfectly fine. As the others speculated on the possible reasons for the activation's failure, Irina realized Frey had neutralized the magic circle's power with his own magic, and the others hadn't noticed because they were panicking. Seeing that only she had realized it, Irina mentally concluded that Frey had prevented the magic circle's activation and saved everyone. Still, Irina wondered why someone like Frey would do such a thing and guessed he might actually be Rihanna. While she wondered why he hid his identity from her, Serena suddenly screamed. It snapped Serena out of her thoughts, and she wondered why Frey was coughing up blood. At the Demon King's castle, she noticed the crow had stopped responding. At the same time, a system window appeared before her displaying a failed quest. Seeing the failure penalty window, she realized she couldn't leave the castle. She decided to treat the first quest as a warm-up and wondered how long she would be confined in the castle. Annoyed, she complained about the unknown entity that forced her to prioritize the system's commands and fight the hero personally. Her movements were the ones restricted, not his. The system replied coldly, stating that without the restrictions, the hero wouldn't stand a chance against her. After more complaints, the system unlocked the clone ability, allowing the user to transfer their consciousness to a clone and roam freely while the original body remained sealed in the castle. The Demon King accepted the offer, but the clone's power would equal about 10% of her strength per day. She activated the ability, assuming it was still unfair, but the system explained it wasn't fair to the hero either. Ignoring the disadvantage, she believed the outcome would remain the same, and her clone stepped out of the castle. Seeing the outside world, the Demon King grew excited and declared the hero was finished. Meanwhile, inside Frey's subconscious, his memories shattered, and he noticed his consciousness fading. However, he woke up in a forest and wondered what was going on, since he had just been in the commoner dorm. He looked around and noticed some similarities to the place he had been with Firoz. Thinking carefully, he guessed he had been thrown into another part of his memories again. He hoped nothing terrible would happen this time. Surprisingly, he heard a child's voice calling for their mother and followed it. To his astonishment, he saw his younger self and immediately remembered the time he and his mother got lost in the mountain behind the mansion. However, his mother was nowhere to be found this time. Coincidentally, Frey spotted a werewolf lurking in the shadows, but didn't remember ever encountering such a terrifying monster. The monster sneaked up on young Frey, who was busy calling for his mother, and lunged at him with murderous intent. Frey watched from his hiding spot and realized that at this rate, his younger self would become the werewolf's next meal. Suddenly, a fire spell hit the werewolf, and only then did young Frey realize he was almost attacked. He watched the werewolf run off, and then Irina appeared, saying she had finally found him. She asked what he was doing in the forest, but he jumped up to hug her, thanking her for saving him. She awkwardly tried to correct him by reminding him she hated nobles, and then they bickered. Adult Frey reviewed the memory and realized he didn't remember meeting Irina in such a place, because back then, he had stumbled upon her while she was working as a bounty hunter. Then, sometime later, he got lost with his mother in the forest behind the mountain, and he never met Irina or the werewolf. Trouble occurred, but his father found them, and they returned home safely. Frey recalled the similar situation with Firoz and concluded he wasn't seeing a regular illusion, but rather, his memories had likely been manipulated. As he tried to sort out his thoughts, his head throbbed intensely, unable to tell what was real or fake. Meanwhile, young Irina told Frey to come with her so she could collect the reward from the Duke. But he said his mother told him not to move from that spot. Confused, Irina informed him the Duke was looking for him, and his mother must be at home with the Duke. Realizing his mother was at home, he followed her, and this bewildered adult Frey, who simply decided to follow them. As they walked through the forest late at night, Irina learned Frey had been stuck there for about 3 hours. At first, she wondered how he managed that in a place crawling with monsters, but then she found something odd, as she remembered accepting the request 2 days ago. He asked her for more information, but she brushed him off, saying it had nothing to do with her. As the boy trailed behind her, he realized he couldn't remember why he hid there, but he knew he was playing hide-and-seek with his mother before getting lost in the forest. When he kept questioning Irina, she snapped at him and assumed his mother might have tampered with his memories. Not far away, they heard a howl, and Frey panicked. But Irina reassured him by revealing she could handle a whole pack. Unfortunately, a werewolf appeared right in front of them, and from its size, she recognized it wasn't the one she had dealt with earlier. Frey trembled, and he asked her what they should do, but then she told him to run. Right then, the werewolf grabbed her like a snack and squeezed her in its fingers, and Frey refused to back down, so he charged to punch the monster, saying he wouldn't leave his friend behind. Despite the pain, Irina yelled at him for not running away, but at that moment the werewolf faced him and sniffed him. The boy was petrified in fear as he realized he had to fight, and adult Frey was surprised the monster didn't attack. What surprised him was that the more he looked at the werewolf, the more familiar it seemed, but he shouldn't know any werewolves. As he tried to recall, he felt a sharp pain. Then, suddenly Irina fired a fireball at the monster, and it angered it, so it kicked Frey, sending him crashing into a nearby tree. She cried out in concern, but the werewolf slammed her into the ground and unleashed multiple blows. At this point, Irina wondered if she would die in such a place, but suddenly, a massive star-shaped attack struck the creature's head, causing it to bleed. To Irina's surprise, she saw Frey standing up, holding a stick and telling her to hang in there, swearing he would save her. Frey charged at the werewolf, and the creature tried to attack him, but suddenly retracted its fist. And in that moment, the boy stabbed its torso, causing it to bleed and fall to the ground. Once it was down, Irina stood up and was shocked by Frey's power. So she asked why he hadn't used it earlier if he was always capable of it. But then he fainted, and she realized he had used up all his mana at once. Terrified, she called his name and tried to wake him up. So adult Frey, who had watched the entire battle, was confused as to why the werewolf stood still after raising its fist. He noticed his headache was strange, so something was definitely wrong. There was no way such an attack could work on a monster of that level. Given how things played out, Frey concluded the reason the attack landed was because the werewolf lost its will to fight, and that meant it knew him, which was why it didn't attack him in its frenzied state. The memory halted, and a pitch-black fog began to appear, making Frey anxious. A week later at Glanna's dorm, Glanna appeared and asked Firoz about him, but she said he was still unconscious even though there was nothing physically wrong with him. Glanna found it strange and told Firoz they would do what they could by spreading rumors that Frey was behind the incident. Firoz was a bit worried since they weren't sure if that was true, but Glanna told her they had no time to be cautious, and if they wanted to take him down, they had a chance while he was unconscious. Firoz agreed with her, but then noted that a saintess shouldn't lie. Glanna, who was eager to eliminate Frey, said they shouldn't hesitate. So she suggested they make people suspect him since they lacked solid proof. After all, he broke into the dorm, and they saw him helping the Demon King's army. She planned to use what they saw to make people suspect his involvement with the Demon King to put his position in jeopardy. Firoz, who couldn't keep up with Glenna's conversation, decided to follow her lead. Suddenly, a guard appeared and announced that Isabel had woken up. Glenna immediately decided to head there to find out why she was at the commoner dorm, believing it would be to their advantage. She left the rest to the guard and went with Firoz. But right after, the Demon King appeared, asking the guard if she could enter, but he refused. So, she used magic to force him to agree. She went straight to her dead crow and tried to use magic to trace its consciousness to uncover the hero's true identity. After trying, she saw Frey's face through the bird's memory and learned he was the hero. With that, she cast a spell and disposed of the bird, noting that since her target was identified, all that was left was to crush him. 3 months later, Frey still hadn't woken up, and Serena, who was sick with worry, asked Kanya what was going on. She believed Kanya knew something and suspected Frey had a chronic illness that Kanya was hiding from her. Kanya feigned ignorance, and that angered Serena, so she swore to use her own methods to find out the truth of the matter. Right then, Irina appeared to clean up. Serena told her to do it later since they were having a serious discussion. Unfortunately, Irina refused and revealed she had made a death pact, so if she didn't finish her tasks on time, she would die. Realizing how troublesome her case was, Serena let her clean while she went outside with Kanya to continue their conversation. As soon as they left, Irina took it as a chance to investigate. But to her surprise, Frey coughed and opened his eyes, so she nervously checked on him, which confused him. Thus, he asked Irina why she was there and how long he had been unconscious. She then regretfully revealed he had been unconscious for about 3 months, and he was surprised because it didn't feel that long in his subconscious. He checked his system and saw it was a penalty that drastically reduced his lifespan. Worried, he wondered who had recognized him. And when he considered the other heroines, remembered Serena had lost her memories. He wondered how any of them could have done it since they didn't know him well enough to see through his act. But that's when he recalled using his ability, which he always avoided showing in front of others, right in front of Irina, and that was also what he did in the Grey Forest. Irina nervously informed him she would go call a doctor, but then he concluded she had realized his true identity. While observing her, Frey wondered if he should force an answer out of her, but then changed his mind, believing he might cause unnecessary trouble for himself if his deduction was wrong. So it was best he observe her to confirm it first. Instantly, the girls received the news, and Kanya and Serena rushed into the room to check on him. He then ordered them to leave, saying he wanted to speak to Kanya privately. Surprised by Serena's reaction, Irina awkwardly followed behind her until they slammed the door shut. Right after, Frey asked Kanya if she knew who had discovered his identity, but she shook her head and told him everyone was still acting the same. Then he told her he suspected Irina. Confused, Kanya asked him why, so Frey revealed she saw him fight in the forest, and even though he tried his best to suppress his habits then, it must have been noticed. Kanya then assured him she would look into it, but before she left, Frey asked her to prepare a meal for him since he was hungry, so she complied. Suddenly, his system window popped up and informed him that an enemy had recognized his true identity. As a result, they gained a beneficial effect. At first, Frey panicked inwardly since his recent quests had become increasingly difficult, but then he reassured himself, believing it was just another day. He recounted his experiences with the system and the heroine so far, and concluded that the system was full of anomalies. Looking at the cat doll, he realized that no matter how much he tried to avoid them, he always ended up in situations that forced him to get involved. Fortunately, he had Kanya by his side, and thanks to her, he wasn't dead yet. As she prepared a meal for him, she swore to ensure his lifespan wasn't shortened any further. On the other hand, Irina wondered why Frey hid his identity and considered asking him directly. But then she considered the slim chance she was wrong, so she decided to observe him to see if he was truly corrupt. Unaware of what Irina was thinking, Frey left the investigation to Kanya before taking action. Meanwhile, Glenna hated Frey to the bone, and she reported him to the Empress, wanting them to arrest him. But since he had outsmarted them earlier by having them sign a contract, she told Glenna that the Emperor's wishes couldn't be easily overturned. Glenna exchanged harsh words with her before storming off in anger. When she met her guard, he apologized for their lack of evidence, but she told him it was fine, and all they needed to do was frame Frey as an accomplice of the Demon King to get him executed. On the other hand, Firoz, who was very simple-minded, was easy for her to manipulate. At the grand church, she noted that she was tired of playing the fool and wanted to make a move, as the red-haired demon was probably doing the same. Frey believed that no matter how unpredictable Firoz acted, he still had Serena by his side. Little did he know, the beauty-picking flowers in the garden received a letter delivered by an owl from the master of the magic tower. Once she opened the letter, her memories were restored, thereby fulfilling the pact she made with the old woman. With her memories recovered, Serena wondered if she should meddle with the system a bit. Frey believed he could freely give her orders without the risk of a penalty. He was determined to see things through to the end, even though the road ahead was full of thorns, and he swore to protect the world where everyone belonged. Meanwhile, in another cave, a cloaked figure entered a dragon's lair, and the dragon questioned their authority. But then they revealed their identity, and the monster was shocked to see the Demon King. She corrected him, stating she was in an avatar, and then ordered the dragon to assemble its army. The monster realized the war was beginning, and the Demon King declared it was time to finish the hero once and for all. Manaka Ishi was the hero who saved the world 1,000 years ago, and Frey Rion Starlight was his descendant. The next hero, following the system and prophecy to unlock the hidden route. After doing all that and being tasked with saving the world as a fake villain, he finally completed the dorm quest, and it was time for the main quest to begin. A few hours later, he suffered a triple stack penalty while fighting the Royal Skull Knights. A few hours prior, Frey was casually slacking off at the Sun Church, and Firoz yelled at him to help her, but he claimed he was distracted by the look on her face. What led Frey to this situation were rumors that he was the mastermind behind the dorm incident. When people heard he was involved with the Demon King's army, they made accusations, but the royal family and the church stepped in to protect him. And to save face, they decided to punish him by having him assist with preparations for the Sun Church's orphanage festival under Firoz's supervision. However, unable to do good deeds while playing the fake villain, he was slacking off as much as possible. Even so, she was so strict with him and followed him everywhere that he had to ask if she was fine just watching him, since she supposedly had a lot of work to do. Annoyed, she told him it was because he might pull something again, and he was surprised she thought so poorly of him. For him to commit a crime after waking up from a 3-month coma, he would need to have a plan. Despite telling her that, she said she was certain he had something to do with what was happening in the church's basement. When he asked what she meant, she went silent after realizing he knew nothing about it, so she told him to forget it. That piqued Frey's curiosity, and he received a critical event notification. It tasked him with uncovering the conspiracy alongside Firoz and stopping the evil plot unfolding in the Sun Church's basement. If successful, he would receive the hero's weapon and awaken it slightly. But if he failed, Firoz would die. Shocked by the event, Frey realized he had never encountered anything like this in the prophecy book. So he thought about it and recognized it was an unavoidable quest. Instantly, he acted as if he knew about the basement, and Firoz believed him before asking what he planned to do. So he baited her by saying she should see for herself if she wanted to know. Meanwhile, someone else was eavesdropping on their conversation without them knowing. A moment later, they went down to the basement, and Firoz was surprised such a place existed. Firoz noted the place looked old, and he was surprised this was her first time there. She then told him it wasn't her fault, as she had tried to investigate the place to see what was there. But when she approached the door, the guards turned her away, saying there was no need to check because it was a storage room for illegal items. Hearing her, Firoz concluded the lax security was due to the festival, and they were lucky to get inside. Firoz eagerly wanted to wrap up the case so she could expose the Demon King's army, but saying it so carelessly made Frey silently question her judgment. He suddenly spotted a broken stone tablet with kana characters written about the legend of the gods. Surprised, he wondered why it existed in their world and noticed it mentioned the sun god, the moon god, and the star god. Firoz surprised him by announcing she had seen these characters before, and back then, they were on stone tablets in the western continent. She admitted she had tried to decipher them but gave up halfway. After walking for a while, they saw numerous troublesome magical seals on a door ahead, and Frey noted that even 10 men working together might not break them. But Firoz surprised him by shattering the spells and the door with a single punch, rendering what he had just said completely useless. Upon entering, they noticed the place was much wider than the hallway, but what caught their attention was the undead army lying in wait. Shocked, Firoz wondered how such evil presences were right beneath the church's hall. But Frey stated the army emitted an aura mixing sunlight and dark magic. Therefore, they were undead holy knights created from the corpses of holy knights. But then he wondered why so many had been created. And that's when Firoz pointed out the massive sacrificial magic circle right above them, and they realized it was much larger than the one they had seen at the commoner dorm. At that moment, Frey finally understood what the undead presence in the sacrificial circle above meant. So he laughed like a true villain and asked Firoz if her question had been answered. He mocked her for following him into the basement, especially now that she was defenseless, and that's when she remembered she had suspected him. So she told him if push came to shove, she would use the sun god's protection. Unfortunately for her, Frey reminded her she could only use it once a day, and that was what she used to break the door earlier. Now that he was in control, he decided to tell her his plan, first by asking her what was right above the magic circle. And when she thought about it, she realized it was the Sun Church's orphanage. Thus, Frey boasted, saying if he activated it during the peak of the festival, everyone above would become sacrifices for the Demon King. Realizing his plan, Firoz called him a monster and angrily walked away, stating she wouldn't let him do it. But he told her to hurry up or anyone who stayed behind would become the Demon King's food. Right after she left the room, he sighed, noting Firoz was capable of ensuring everyone escaped no matter what. He walked toward the advancing army, noting it would be a tough battle and saying it was the only way to save everyone while playing the bastard. A few archers shot arrows at him, but he slashed them to pieces. Noting that now no one was watching, he could fight like a hero for the first time in a while. He slashed through the skull soldiers, but they kept coming back no matter how many times. And he realized he was at a disadvantage, especially with the double stack penalty the system had rewarded him with. So he unleashed his mana and stated he had to speed things up. As he continued his assault, Irina watched him from not far away, and she concluded her intuition from a month ago wasn't wrong. She had gone to the Grey Forest and found a rock with the same starlight mana as Frey's. Thus she concluded Rihanna was indeed Frey, but she didn't understand the reasoning behind it, since Frey had treated her cruelly, and she wondered why he cursed her yet still protected her. She wanted to know his goal, and as she had observed recently, Frey only did evil deeds in front of others. She wondered who he truly was. Frey continued fighting, but his speed was dropping. In the meantime, he noticed it would be dangerous for his health to prolong the battle. After destroying many of them, he saw two giant skeleton mages casting a spell behind the forces and realized they were activating the sacrificial spell. Noticing they were accelerating the process, Frey charged forward, fighting off the skull soldiers to clear a path to the mages. But right then he reached his limit and began to bleed. Nevertheless, he persevered by leaping into the air and snapping the skeleton mage's arms. With that, the spell stopped and it disappeared. So, Frey, who had pushed past his limits, concluded the orphanage was safe. He then collapsed to the ground even though the skull soldiers were still active. They walked toward him and tried to stab him, but Irina launched a fireball at them before closing the distance and shielding Frey. She then picked him up and tried to wake him, but saw he was unconscious. So she tried to carry him away, but he was too heavy. To her surprise, the skeletons emerged unscathed from her magic, and she cursed because that was the last attack scroll she used. But then she checked her bag and found one more. She then recalled her shady merchant had given her a free item for buying so many fire magic scrolls. Immediately, Irina broke the seal to use the magic on the skeletons. But then a teleportation circle appeared beneath her feet, and she realized what kind of scroll she had been given. Before the skeletons could reach them, they were teleported to a forest and they crashed into a tree. Injured, she checked herself and then saw that Frey was still alive. So, she checked the used scroll and said she would complain to the shop later for mixing up the two items. She then observed the forest and noticed it wasn't gray. And to her surprise, she saw the secret base Frey had built when they were kids. With that, she concluded they were in a forest near the Starlight Mansion. She checked the base and then remarked that she would have no choice but to ask Frey directly. So she poured him a potion. The next morning at the base, Frey woke up with a splitting headache, and he saw Kanya right in front of him, or so he thought. She told him she had saved him, and he thanked her, not realizing it was Irina, who used a spell to appear as Kanya before him. She made up a flimsy excuse about why she was in the basement at the time, but then he asked her where they were, saying the place felt familiar. He tried to talk about it, but Irina, who didn't want to be seen through, told him she had prepared something simple for him, and she offered him fruit with cooked fish. Irina looked at it and remarked that it was quite lavish compared to what Kanya prepared. So, he looked around before telling her the berries looked familiar. He picked up an ice dragon berry and talked about how nostalgic it was. This time he said he couldn't remember the name, so he asked her what he had named them when they were kids, and she told him, unaware that he had seen through her disguise. Curious, she asked him to detail what had happened, so he began by recounting the whole ordeal of how he had to play the fake hero, and by evening, he finished the story. Kanya wouldn't actually need such an explanation since he had briefed her earlier, but Irina, who had just learned about it, struggled to process the information, so she went outside to get some fresh air. After she left, Frey smiled and said he had told her before that she was a terrible actress. At a pond, Irina struggled to process what she had just learned, and she realized she had been hindering him the whole time. Even so, she couldn't forget the fact that he had killed her in a past life. While she was debating what to do, he tossed her a mana orb, and she instinctively used fire to neutralize it. Still holding the flame, she asked who it was, but then Frey stepped out saying he had found her, and he called her by her name, Irina. Hearing that, she dropped her disguise and said she should have recognized his mana. Annoyed, she asked why she had to save him. But he said she didn't have to after all. He had prepared himself to be hated a long time ago. So he begged her to wait for him a little, and when everything was over, he would formally apologize to her. But until then, he wanted to protect her. After hearing him out, she sighed and called him a nuisance, reminding him that most of the time he was the one near death. So she told him he wouldn't be able to apologize to her if he died, and she swore not to let him die until she got her apology. This made him very happy. Once everything was settled, Irina turned to leave, and she grumbled about wasting such a high-value item. He quietly followed her and found the mysterious scroll that had teleported them there highly suspicious, and it made him wonder if someone had orchestrated this entire situation. Elsewhere in a bar, Domakon, the barkeep, told a mysterious figure who showed up late that night that they were closed. The figure mentioned his name, and he smirked, cracking a plate with magic, and called them a special guest. Since his true identity had been brought up, Domakon asked the purpose of their visit, and he raised his sharp utensils, which he intended to use to interrogate the personnel. As he launched them at them, the cloaked figure simply snapped their fingers, and Domakon's magic was nullified. Amazed that his spatial magic was easily broken, Domakon asked if the figure was the Demon King, and that's when she revealed herself and greeted him. A few days later, Frey woke up and happily told Kanya that it was the first time in a while he had slept well, and he wondered if it was because he had overcome his ordeal. She happily congratulated him and told him to rely on her whenever he faced difficulties. But before she could speak her mind, Irina barged in, and Kanya realized she was no longer his sole confidant, but now a loyal subordinate. When Frey was with Irina, a few commotions broke out, but they didn't escalate into major problems. By the time he returned, Kanya and Irina had cleared the air and were able to cooperate with each other. From Irina, they learned that Glanna was the one they needed to be most wary of. After all, she had sensed the change in Kanya and was keeping that information to herself. Ever since the Commoner Dorm incident, Glanna had planned to kill Frey as soon as possible. She had also managed to draw the elders of the Moonlight family to her side, and she wouldn't hesitate to use any means to assassinate him. Despite being wary of her, Frey noticed that the Elder Council was beyond Glanna's control. While thinking about that, he decided to focus on the main quest, which was supposed to be liberating the slave market. He also believed the Demon King's army would make serious moves since that was what was written in the prophecy book. He realized he needed to formulate a detailed strategy and avoid the risk of assassination since they had relatively a lot of free time at the beginning of the break. Or at least he thought so. Unfortunately for him, on the last day before the break, Ms. Iseret told them that during the break, a special exam would be held. Confused, Frey asked her why, since they had already finished their exams. But Ms. Iseret told him someone had been bribing. It was ruled that the scores were unclassified, so they had to retake the exam. Frey knew this was aimed at him, and he realized others had been put in jeopardy because of his decisions. The other students complained, but Glanna silenced them before announcing that the re-exam was a strict order from the royal family. Frey was shocked that the royal family was demanding fairness in exams again, and he concluded that it was Glanna's doing. That meant she had secured powerful backers. Ms. Iseret then continued to explain, telling them the exam format was a defense battle revolving around a representative, and the team's task was to protect their representative until time ran out. She started by telling them the team's representative would be decided by a vote, so she split them into commoners and nobles, asking the students to vote for the person they supported the most. Frey concluded that all the commoners would vote for Glanna, but as for the nobles, he wasn't sure. What he did know was that anyone with common sense wouldn't pick him, someone labeled as a member of the Demon King's army. Well, a moment later he was called to the stage with Glanna, and he cursed inwardly, calling those who voted for him idiots. But right then, Ms. Iseret told them she would announce each team's representative. She called Glanna the noble team's representative and Frey the commoner team's representative. Hearing her, the students immediately caused an uproar, asking her how it turned out that way. But Ms. Iseret told them she never said the person they chose would be their team's representative. Saying that, she instructed the teams to decide among themselves on the location and method of defense as the winning team's representative would be granted the authority to expel one person from their class. Frey realized the severity of the issue and noted that if he was expelled, his contract with the system would end. So he had to win this match at all costs. After school, Frey headed to his mansion with Kanya, Irina, and the other commoners. He told Kanya and Irina that they were at a complete disadvantage, and if push came to shove, the other side might flee to the imperial palace. But Kanya told him she had contacted the main family and asked them to cooperate for the exam. Additionally, Irina had explained to the commoners that he might be more cooperative than they thought. Frey complained about the contents of the prophecy book always being slightly off, but then he asked for their cooperation. Suddenly, the carriage came to an abrupt stop. So, Frey yelled at the coachman for doing something so dangerous. But he told them someone had suddenly jumped out in front of him. The coachman then told the mysterious person to get out of the way, but then Domikon apologized before introducing himself and saying he came to see Frey. Hearing the name Domikon, Frey recalled he was the second in command of the Demon King's army. While wondering why Domikon had appeared, Frey told the girls to stay put while he went out to talk to the demon, but Kanya disagreed, saying it was too dangerous. He reassured them that Domikon wouldn't attack right away and definitely had some purpose. However, Irina still decided to go with him, saying they were supposed to be involved in matters regarding him. Kanya joined in too, and he agreed on the condition that he would be the one doing the talking. When they stepped out, Domikon asked who the girls were and Frey called them his subordinates. Even though that angered Irina, she let it go because she wanted to know what this meeting was about. That's when Domikon told Frey to come with him. Surprised, Frey boldly accused Domikon of wanting to kidnap him. But Domikon explained that the meeting couldn't start without Frey present. Confused, Frey asked what he was talking about, and Domikon happily informed Frey that he had become a member of the highest rank in their Demon King's army. And this stunned the trio. Bewildered, Frey asked Domikon what he meant by the highest rank. He then checked the system to see if Domikon was lying, but then realized he was telling the truth. Although he didn't know the details, he saw that Domikon genuinely wanted him to attend the meeting. Thus, Frey called this the perfect opportunity to grasp the current military strength of the Demon King's army. Even if it was a trap, he didn't want to miss it. So he told Irina and Kanya to go ahead without him, and they were shocked by his carelessness. He glanced at them and told them to trust him because this could be an opportunity. They agreed. And as Kanya told him to run away if anything happened, Irina said she would explain to the others. After settling that, Frey told Domikon to lead the way. Domikon smiled and then created a teleportation portal before grabbing Frey and warning him he would feel dizzy during the trip. The girls watched them vanish and they were worried for Frey. When Frey arrived at the meeting, he saw the monsters gathered and noted how fierce they looked. When they saw him, they whispered, wondering why a human was among them. Yeah, he wondered what the Demon King was thinking, but then he was directed to a seat. And when he checked, Domikon confirmed that he would now be the number 2 figure of the Demon King's army just like him. At this point, Frey wondered if it was a trap, but then he noted that this treatment seemed a bit too good. So, he smiled nervously at Domikon, and Domikon told him that he was simply following the Demon King's will. Frey used his system to check Domikon, and once he confirmed there were no signs of lying, he assumed this situation was convenient if the Demon King had planned it. While noting this was better than half-hearted treatment, Frey intended to interrogate Domikon. But right then, an ogre demon named Rahir yelled at them to stop. He stepped up energetically and walked toward Frey before declaring his opposition to the final decision. He roared, saying that although he had quietly obeyed Domakon all this time as the Demon King's representative, he couldn't allow Frey, a weak human, to stand above him. Saying that, he told Frey to draw his sword and swore to crush him like a bug. Frey then asked if the objection was valid, and Domakon admitted it before informing him that the Demon King's army operated on a meritocracy, so anyone could challenge their superiors at any time if they believed they were stronger. Domakon agreed with Rahir, and then snapped his fingers, noting they should prove the Demon King's decision. Instantly, the space in the room shifted, and the participants were transported to an arena. There, Rahir introduced himself as a descendant of the great Orobas demons, and said he heard Frey was a descendant of the great hero. Saying that, he swore to defeat Frey right there and prove Domakon was a fraud. He immediately charged and swung a massive blow at Frey, but he blocked the attack and they clashed. Impressed, Rahir praised Frey before asking how long he could hold out. After clashing with him, Frey wondered who Rahir thought he was. But then the giant Orobas charged at him while yelling for Frey to show him his true strength. Frey glared at Rahir angrily, while noting the prophecy book was unreliable, and just when he was already mad, he was tasked with proving his strength again. Extremely furious, he glared at Rahir, who realized he had messed up, and then unleashed his overwhelming mana just as requested. But he warned Rahir it was too late for regrets since he was in a bad mood. Rahir immediately tried to apologize and surrender, but Frey had already lunged at him before engaging, punching Rahir's jaw, sending him flying and knocking him out. He then turned to the rest and asked them if anyone else was dissatisfied like Rahir, to come at him all at once. After witnessing the one-sided match, no one stepped up. So Domakon praised Frey and brought everyone back to the room. He then led Frey back to his seat, saying no one would dare challenge the Demon King's authority. But to his surprise, Frey refused to sit down. Instead, he challenged Domakon, noting it would be inconvenient to have two number twos. Domakon understood Frey's intention, but didn't expect his adaptability to be so terrifying. From that moment, Frey chose not to act according to the Demon King's or the system's will. This didn't go as he wanted, but he chose to become an unpredictable variable. Amused by Frey's decision to challenge him, Domakon called him an interesting person. So he agreed on the condition that they wouldn't let the match delay the meeting and suggested settling it in one round. Frey agreed with him and was glad Domakon acted exactly as he expected. He knew Domakon was a rank 2 demon, capable of freely manipulating space with magic and never liked prolonged battles. Just like Frey, both took their stances, and Domakon noted it had been a long time since he accepted a challenge, so he apologized in advance if he misjudged his own strength. Instantly, he unleashed a full-power attack, but Frey smirked before executing a swift sword draw, neutralizing the attack. Seeing their mana cancel each other out, Domakon concluded the match might end in a draw, but Frey wondered if that was the case. He then announced he still had more tricks up his sleeve, and that's when Domakon realized he had been tricked, so he prepared to block it, but then realized Frey had instantly occupied all the available space with his previous sword flash. Domakon then wondered how long Frey had been calculating everything, and he wondered if Frey had been waiting for such a moment. What kind of person was he then? Just like that, Frey launched another attack, shattering Domakon's space, piercing the demon in the process. As Domakon fell, he admitted defeat, and Frey told them all that the number 2 spot was now his alone. He asked if there were any objections, and since no one dared to question him, he started the meeting. There, the atmosphere was heavy, and no one dared to speak. So he told them since this was his first time, he would let Domakon chair the meeting. Just like that, the former number 2 nervously began, and this gave Frey goosebumps, experiencing the effects of the hierarchy system for the first time. He noted that his current position would allow him to gather all information about the Demon King's army with certainty, and all he had to do was carefully filter out what was useful. Domakon then got straight to the day's agenda. He showed them pictures from a dossier, and when Frey saw it, he discovered it was the slave market from the main quest. When Domakon started addressing the issue, Frey listened closely and learned their strategy and what they wanted to guard against. Meanwhile, as the carriages approached the mansion, Irina worried about Frey, but then Kanya reassured her he would be fine. Unfortunately, Kanya herself was the least reassured. So even when Irina tried to talk about something else, she kept muttering to herself that Frey would be okay. Back at the meeting, Frey planned to use the demons to cause chaos and interfere with their plans. As soon as the carriage arrived at the Starlight Mansion, she informed Kanya. Then she reminded Kanya of her task, and a moment later, the commoners were brought into the place. When Kanya saw the servants, she told them, as previously informed, that they had to leave the mansion that very day. Then she turned to the commoners and told them that starting from now, they would take the servants' place to become the new servants of the mansion. The commoners immediately complained, but Kanya clapped her hands, telling them to be quiet before ordering them to change into the prepared uniforms and start working because no complaints would be accepted. She informed them it was a direct order from her superior, Lord Frey. Then, a girl wrote a letter and gave it to an owl to deliver, but she didn't know Kanya was watching through her cat doll. Sometime later, Frey arrived, and Kanya anxiously ran to his side. He happily greeted them, but then noticed they both looked pale. So, he asked them about it, but Irina didn't snitch. Instead, she asked what he had done with the Demon King's army. He simply summarized for them that he was no longer a high-ranking executive, but now the second in command. Hey, shocked, Irina pressed him for the whole story, and he promised to explain the details later. Then, he informed them he had issued an order beneficial to him, which was to let the demons attack the Moonlight family's elder council on his behalf. Hearing him, she realized he had really thought things through. Frey then asked Kanya about the matter he requested, and she told him everything went as he had asked. And just as he predicted, there was a spy among the commoner students working for Glanna. Frey knew something like that would happen, and Kanya revealed the student's name was Alice. True to his promise, he intended to reveal the details of the meeting, but to his surprise, Alice told him to leave the details for later and get some rest. Noticing he had lost quite a bit of weight since she last saw him, Frey told her he was fine, and that it was because he was hungry. He then complained that the demons didn't serve any food during the meeting, and the girls were stunned by his audacity. Soon after, Frey was about to eat, but then he saw something disgusting right in front of him, and realized it was clearly poisoned. So he yelled at the chef for experimenting with his meal. In that moment, he felt a sense of familiarity as he recalled how he used to scold Kanya when she tried to poison him. The chef then complained she wasn't used to the ingredients, and she had simply tried her best. So Frey asked her name, and once he learned she was Alice, Glanna's spy, who eventually became the leader of the school revolution. Given Glanna's charisma, Frey wasn't surprised she would use Alice. He scolded her before belittling her status by saying commoners would never understand. Then he yelled at her that this was why he hated commoners, since they couldn't do anything right. He insulted the dish before throwing the plate to the ground, shocking Alice, and then told her to never serve him livestock food again. Before leaving, he told her he was different from her kind, then coldly walked away. As rehearsed, Kanya anxiously followed him, trying to calm him down, but he ordered her to shut up. Alice was genuinely heartbroken by the insults and mistreatment. But when her worried friend appeared, Alice smiled at her and said she just had to endure until the break was over. A few nights later, Frey rested outside, and he was surprised he had earned so many villain points. But he still considered finding more opportunities to earn a bit more. He noted it had been 6 days since the siege began, and wondered if Kana had made a move yet. Frey recounted how he had set up an insurance policy against the Elder Council using the Demon King's army. But the demons said they wouldn't be able to act immediately. He suddenly heard the clashing of swords and realized it was coming from the mansion. So he wondered if they were being attacked by Kana and the others. He immediately picked up his sword and rushed straight to the mansion, but when he arrived, he saw his servants knocked out. So he tried to wake them and gather information. Seeing the guards weren't severely injured, he rushed inside, wondering if everyone inside was safe. As soon as he entered, he sensed the air was poisoned, most likely by the Moonlight family. He quickly covered his nose and noted that if someone carelessly inhaled the poison, they wouldn't wake up for hours. Then, he decided to neutralize the poison with Starlight Mana, noting it was a burden, but he had no other choice. When Frey reached the hallway, he saw most people had been taken down, so he headed upstairs, noting he heard a sound coming from there. And when he checked the place, he saw a ninja, so he sneaked up behind the person and struck him with his sword. After observing the dead messenger, Frey noted the current situation wasn't part of the siege battle, but rather an independent operation by Glanna. He then decided to wear the fallen ninja's outfit, and he gave a fake report to a higher-ranking ninja. The ninja clicked his tongue before informing Frey they needed to move quickly to make up for the delay. Frey agreed, and he was glad the ninja hadn't noticed. So, he made sure to find out their objective upon arriving at his mansion, and he planned to make him confess Glanna's and the Elder Council's plans.